interact and in fact get answers for questions they may be having for persons interested in occupying the highest office in the land. And that being the case, we have taken upon ourselves, the media in the Gambia, to conduct these debates. You will understand that all of the media houses participate in these debates with us here live and beaming across the world. And I'd like to say thank you to the partners who have joined us from day one and are still with us: Gambia Music Store, iAfrica TV, Fatu, Fatu Network, Voice Out Digital, Gambia Talent Promotions, Star TV, amongst a plethora of media houses that always join us here. So it's always a pleasure to do this. But also, for the first time in our history, we are witnessing history in the making ourselves. We have up to 6 or 7 independent candidates vying for the office of the president. Equally, we have 18 registered political parties. So the debate today is centered on the independent candidates. We have received word from the camp of Esambay File that they will not be able to participate tonight, which we accept, and they expressed it a few days ago. Marisok also has been contacted, and she's up country engaging women folk and doing political activity, according to her. Amadou Kante, Dr. Amadou Kante, also has been approached and communicated to. He also said he's not going to be able to make it. Banky had accepted to participate, but pulled the plug this afternoon from us to say he is not prepared because he has not been informed adequately about the topic and doesn't even know the location. All of those accepted. Our gratitude goes to you gentlemen, from Mr. Tamsu Jassy in the United States, to Kitabu Fati, to Alaji Mamadi Kurang, and to Karjang. The 4 of you participating in the debate here with us today live. Now, we had agreed amongst ourselves that we will take 5 minutes to introduce each of us and our programs of activity as pertains to our first 100 days in office, what economic decisions we're going to make, and which such reforms that we are also going to conduct. And all the 4 gentlemen here have been introduced and have agreed to do it 5 minutes. The rules will remain the same. Questions and answers will take 2 minutes per answer. Each participant has up to 3 times to borrow 2 extra minutes to conclude a point. This, gentlemen, I believe, is what we had agreed. To set the ball rolling, we will start with you, Mr. Tamsu Jassy in the United States. Your first 5 minutes begins now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame. I would like to use this opportunity to pay my respect to you, Mr. Drame. I would extend the same respect to my wife, Mrs. Hadiba Jan Jassy, members of my executive, and supporters of Homeland Security, as well as to my colleagues that are with me on this platform today, and also to my fellow citizens. My name is Tamsu Jassy, born in Banjul. In my work experience, I serve in the United States Navy. I'm a veteran of Operation Desert Storm. In the Gambia, I serve as the first Gambian police advisor and subsequently became the Deputy Inspector General of Police. I then served as Director General of the Gambia Immigration Department before getting into Mile 2 as a result of my alleged involvement in the 2006 coup d'etat involving Mr. Ndur Chan. After that, I came back to the United States after the Reverend Jesse Jackson negotiated my release, along with another colleague. And I came back to the Gambia and served as a consultant on the United Nations Development Program to prepare a community policing strategy and implementation plan for the Gambia Police Force, as well as consultancy on the formulation of institutional policies for both the Gambia Police Force and the Gambia Immigration Department. In my educational career, I have a master's degree in terrorism and homeland security, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I hold a postgraduate certificate in public administration, as well as a second postgraduate certificate in justice studies. I am very familiar with the security sector reforms that have stalled in the Gambia. And I think it is time that this matter be resurrected and the Gambia move on. At this point, Mr. Drame, I want to know whether you want me to go directly into my 100 days or it was just an opportunity to introduce myself and allow my colleagues to do the same.
Please, sir, go ahead with your first 100 days, please.
All right. In order to, you see, back in 2016, the Gambian people voted for change. But this change actually have never happened. In fact, the Gambian condition has deteriorated to such a point that we need to press the reset button. To do so, we need to usher in a government that would take the reforms seriously that the Barrow government has failed to do. So for the top 100 days of my office, I would like to lay the foundation of explaining that prior to this, 3 months ago, we have started preparing ourselves for our first 100 days in office. And we did this by actually identifying the areas in which reforms are required and came to the realization that every sector in the Gambia needs to be reformed. But we are of the opinion that 50% of Gambia's strength is in the Gambia, the other 50% is outside of the Gambia. Now, we need a president who would understand this and build that bridge between the 50% at home and the 50% in the diaspora to make a strong Gambia. So what we have decided to do is that instead of bothering the Gambian people with a manifesto that people never read and parties never follow, we would just focus on a reform agenda. And the first 100 days, we would constitute a panel, a committee of Gambian experts who would actually put out a reform request from all Gambians, from all walks of life, to send in their executive summaries of their reform programs so that they would be included into the package of a national reform agenda. Once this is done, these individuals would be invited to come in and actually give a presentation of their proposed reform in the particular sector that they have the expertise. The idea is to identify a team for each sector that would actually prepare a reform agenda for the Gambian people. Say there would be one for the agricultural sector, one for the economic sector, security, health, and so on and so forth. A collection of all of these reform packages is what we would call our national strategic direction. This is what we would put forward to the Gambian people so that they would hold our government accountable. Now, once that is done, we have also identified the 100 strategic positions in the Gambia that actually are the foundation of any economic development. So we have decided that once I am inaugurated, within 72 hours of taking office, every permanent secretary and deputy permanent secretary, every head of department and deputy, and every parastatal and deputy, the ambassadors and their deputies will all send in their CVs and a description of their credentials so that this committee would go ahead and review all of these documents to ensure that people holding these positions are qualified to do so. And this would be an independent, competent body that would give recommendation as to who stays in office and who doesn't. So what we do is, once, for instance, they identify that Mr. X at this particular department matches the skills that are required and the experience that is required.
One more minute, Mr. Jassy. One more minute.
They will be given, once they identify someone qualified to hold the position, that person remains. The other people that may not qualify to hold their offices will be redeployed. This is important so that we will not continue to have round pegs in square holes and square pegs in round holes. This would give opportunity to Gambian people to apply for these jobs should they become qualified, and actually open the job market to these strategic positions so that we would have the opportunity to pick the right people to do the job for the Gambian people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jassy. It's been great. We've got the ball rolling. So we'll go to you now, Mr. Kitabu Fati. Your first 100 days, you have 5 minutes on the economic plan and reforms that you may do. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. I think I have to stand because I'm a short guy. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our able host, Mr. Drame, and my fellow candidates, and the media house present here. My name is Kitabu Fati, born and raised in the Gambia. I do comedy as a profession. If you look deeper into comedy, we are more of civic educators. So I think that's a brief introduction about me. I've joined the race to contest for election this year because I know this country very well and I love this country dearly. I've slept where the poorest of the poor slept in this country. I have eaten what the poorest of the poor eat in this country. So I believe it's not only going to be about education, but it's going to be about knowledge about the people to be able to rule this country. So our first 100 days in office, Gambia suffers a hard deal of corruption and mismanagement. I believe to put things in the rightful place, what we need is a situation analysis. We need assessment. We need to know what is in that office before we set the ball rolling. Because in 2016, we've all seen it here, the coalition came together with lots of plans, and the implementation was a problem. Because why? When they went into the office, the first thing they said was there was no money in the coffers. So I believe before we have to set up ideas, set up things, we need to know what is the problem. We need to identify the problems, our strengths, our faults, to be able to do a better planning for this country. Then the PDP government, if we are elected into office, the first thing we'll do, we'll set up a committee, a fraud committee. Like I said before, corruption is the problem of this nation. And if, like, one thing should change in our government, like the Mandinka said, that is a problem in this country. If a person who is entrusted a place to run the place for the country believes that he needs to enrich himself first before doing something for the country, is a big problem. Then we have to set up a fraud committee, and as the assessment is going on with the situation analysis, we will have to go out with our whole government to go to the offices, to the sectors. We know what is happening in that places. Today, our health sector is a problem in this country. Women are dying all the time. What is the problem? Is it the doctors? Or is it the women? Or is it our system? So we need to know all those things to be able to set up a proper agenda for our health sector. You check our agricultural system. Why are the youths not involving in agriculture? Our first 100 days will make sure we sit down and revamp, change things, because agriculture is what takes a country to the next level. So we need to bring more of technology in the ways of agriculture. You know, that's the most important thing, because today we can all say,
1 more minute, sir.
Yes, we can all say that the country is going into a direction that we don't all want. But what can we do to change that? I believe that through a thorough assessment and a thorough situation analysis, we'll be able to identify the problems of the country, and we'll be able to do things that are needed in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Fati. The next speaker is Alaji Mamadi Kurang, who is also a presidential candidate for the 2021 elections. Your 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haruna Drame. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for the members of the audience and fellow Gambians. I'm very pleased to be here today to present my case of why I should be elected as the president of this country and on the 4th of December 2021. In December 2016, the Gambians went to the poll and elected a president. As we stand today, 5 years later, we all know there is much to be desired. We had a coalition government that promised a lot. Yakari Barinoy. There was a lot that was promised to us. But so far, we could say that 90% of the promises have not been delivered to the Gambian people. So why am I putting forward myself to contest those promises? A transition government was supposed to investigate. Then came the Janet Commission to investigate the assets of the former president and account for it to the people. The results yet to be seen. There is the Constitutional Review Commission that was supposed to write a new constitution at so much cost, almost $200 million. Some would say, like me, it was not necessary to write a whole constitution because there was already a constitution. It was only a matter of needing or requiring us to reform those parts of the constitution that were of concern to the people, like 50+1, citizenship. Those were the critical issues that Gambians were fighting for, the media laws today. So why spend so much money? Nevertheless, the money has been spent, but we're still waiting for a referendum. The president has not given us an answer as to why there is no referendum. We know the entanglements that happen between the political parties, and it boils down to one thing. They have put the party before the country. They have put the individual interest before the country. So why am I here to contest? Still on the same question. We had the Truth Reconciliation TRRC, the Truth Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. Reparation. What is reparation? If you found me here, you bring down my fence, you knock it down with your car, to reparate me is to put it back to where it was. So the burning question today is, after 3 years, it was supposed to be delivered. Now it's 5 years. Where is the reparation? Another commission that has been dragged and dragged and dragged at so much cost to the taxpayer. So why am I here today? Why am I contesting for the presidency? The security sector reform was promised to the people. We said, if you want to take a general home to go and sit down, a major general, you need to give him money. But we had a coalition government that spent money where the money is not supposed to be spent. That spent almost $1 billion to $2 billion on a transition. As a result, no security sector reform, no civil service reform. So where do we stand? People ask, why don't you join other parties? Which other parties? We ask you back again. Do you want us to join the parties that put the interests of the party before the country? For what purpose would you join such parties as a patriotic citizen? In fact, the partyism is in question at the moment. Whether it is individual interest that dominates, or it is the party interest that dominates over the national interest. They have not convinced us in any way. So we still continue to ask. Now you will begin to understand why we're putting ourselves forward to contest the election. As they say, Ja'al haqqun wa zahaq al-batil wa inna al-batil kana zahuka. The time for truth, the moment for truth for this country has come. Gambians have been asking, what would we do in the first 100 days? There is people called change of government is not the same as change of system.
There's 1 more minute, sir.
Change of government not the same as change of system. There are natural systems and government and social systems. I'll borrow 2 more minutes, sir. There are natural systems.
Of course, 2 minutes will be added.
Right. There are natural systems and also social systems. We would like to do a security sector reform. We would like to come in where the transition government failed. I have served in the Janet Commission. I'm an economist and I'm an accountant. We know where the commissions fail. We know where the money is. We have to start from there. Those reports need to be looked at again. They might not be perfect reports, but you have to dilute. In economics, we said you must look at the exogenous variables and see the effect of those exogenous variables, the outside variables. Take care of them, but still cannot run away from the problem. Our health sector needs to be looked at in the first 100 days to make sure that not many women are dying at birth. We must look at the agricultural sector. Reform has to happen in all the major sectors. Housing is a problem in this country. Since Bakote, there has not been a major housing project that government have financed. Dug it, just to cut the land 50 by 50, 30 by 30. It's not a housing project. The Social Security was set up 50 years or 40 years ago to give housing to teachers, civil servants, doctors, and nurses. That has not happened. That's our priority in our first 100 days. The e-government. Look at this government. Nobody can even tell you how many Gambians are there. What is your base? Where is the ID card for every citizen is supposed to be free? Why is the voter's card free and the ID card is not free? Big questions. The party before the country always put the country behind. It is time for we the Gambians to take charge of our country and make something out of this. Housing.
Final minute, sir.
Housing makes sense, my friends. Zulkarnain was what they call Babili Mansa. He was building and he asked for Ainuni. Bikuwatin. It's in the Quran. Without the youths, you cannot build anything in this country, my friends. This country, why do I want to be president? I have taught 20,000 people in this country in Jollof tutors. I never asked a student which tribe do you belong to or which part of the country you belong to. Is Arujatun Ardun? Rajan. I will come back again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we are beginning the debate actually in earnest. Mr. Karjang, young man, putting the heart forward as well for office of the president and want to be the occupant of #1 Marina Parade come the 5th of December 2021. Your first 5 minutes, sir.
Yes, thank you for having me, Haruna. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I first of all thank the organizers for giving the Gambians the chance to scrutinize their leaders. And also I thank the co-panelists for taking this bold step, towards taking a task that is so heavy. Also I thank the audience who made it here today, regardless of whomsoever you represent. This shows that you love your country. And I also thank the journalists and all the media houses here today. I am Babu Karjang, a husband, a son, and a member of a society, and a good citizen. Actually, my focus here, regarding my first 100 days, is based on the status quo. Because we all know that right now the world is suffering from a global crisis, that is this pandemic. And if you look at the world, it's like one big village, it's a global village. And economies around the world are affected. When you look at the United States, China, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, they account for 60% of the world's supply and demand, that's the GDP. 65% of the world's manufacturing, 41% of the world's manufacturing and export. And if these countries, their economies, they sneeze, the rest of the world catches a cold. And Gambia, looking at our current state, Gambia will suffer from fever. So actually, my first 100 days in office will be focused on a technical audit, because at the end of the day, there's a system already in place, and this technical audit, we would want to at least discover, how far, how fast, will the economy damage, and how bad will it get, and how long will the damage last, and what are the mechanisms, of the economic contagion, and above all, what can my government do about it? So regarding economists, it's about how trade goes on in a certain country, so that livelihood can be easy. Because when you look at right now, prices, are on the high side. The healthcare system, it's completely ruined. And basic necessities of life, is at stake. So my focus, is going to be something that's going to be international. Where there is a global crusade that's going on, on how to, put, a cushion, for the world's economies, to lie on. Because at the end of the day, in times of crisis, I think what focus governments should do, is to create like response, mechanisms, whereby their countries' men will not suffer, from this global crisis that's going on around the world. So my focus mainly, because at the end of the day, getting into a system, you're not going to find, machines or systems. You're going to find human beings, and government. Yeah, government is a machinery that's ongoing. So I think my main focus, is to engage, and this technical audit will, unfold, certain, things that has to be taken care of. And it's going to be sector by sector, and each sector, will be focused on, so that the needs can arise, so that together, we can tackle these problems that as a government we are going through, and as a society also we are going through. And I think basically, the time is too short, and this is a very delicate, topic. And in a nutshell, regarding reforms, I don't believe much in reforms. I believe in recovery in this day and age, because thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. We have an hour plus to debate. So we'll have too many 2 minutes in between us to do this. Mr. Jassy, in the United States, we'll come back to you. Would you, sir, want to react to any of the speakers here today based on their submission? 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Not quite. However, I would like to add that in order to bring any meaningful economic recovery into the country, we have to look at our ports authority. The seaport is an area that's a major generator of income for the nation. But right now, it's there are certain issues that need to be reviewed, and such as the corruption, the congestion, the security, the turnaround times for vessels, the need for the expansion of the facility, the staffing, efficiency, as well as a transition from the handling of cash to electronic financial transactions. I believe that once the Ports Authority it's brought up to the standard of efficiency that it actually deserves, this will begin to have a direct economic impact on the Gambia. What we have right now is that we are losing a lot of business to our neighbors in the South region when it comes to discharging of goods, because we can only discharge, I think, one vessel at a time. There is need to look into the possibility of creating dry ports somewhere for the inland, where once containers are discharged that are heading for other destinations, they would move it to these dry ports and create the room and create a better turnaround time for the vessels to discharge. One of the other things that we must do for economic recovery is to look at what kind of impact COVID has on our economy, and what kind of shall I say, grants and other assistance that came in.
You want to borrow your
that was
first
supposed
2
to be
minutes?
used that was to be used as an economic cushion that was actually not properly utilized by our present government. The economic recovery itself would have to take a team of specialists instead of relying on the know-how and knowledge of one individual or one party. So I do agree with my colleagues where they pointed out that there will be economic committees set up to look into this. I would actually create a presidential economic advisory group that would actually focus on the economy, made up of expert economists that can actually guide the economic transformation of the Gambia, and not depend entirely on one individual's know-how or a party's know-how. I think it has to be a collective effort by all that we have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're assuming that he has taken into his first 2 minutes. Now, Mr. Kurang, would you react to any of the presentations here for 2 minutes? You agree, you disagree, is possible, is not possible? You think of anybody's presentation?
I will maybe continue with where I stop, if you would allow me.
You still have 2 minutes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, that's fine. The first 100 days, I think one of the things that Gambians have been calling for is declaration of assets. We've had in this country, the president is a millionaire before he became a president. And then we're suspecting that he's a multi-millionaire. But without asset declaration, I think there's a big question. We also have education sector reform, which is on the top of our agenda for Youth for Change. We call it change because these are the things that we want to see in change. In the Gambian education sector has two problems which we must address. There is an access problem, people getting to where they want to get in tertiary or other education, and also a relevance problem. So many people leave university and they cannot employ themselves, or they leave polytechnics. I think this is going to be addressed. We want people who did Arabic, right? Thousands and thousands of people in Gambia are going to madrasas. My friend, your countrymen, they go to madrasa, they finish, nothing for them to do. How can you develop when half of your population is marginalized? We will make a stop to that. That's one thing we will address. The Arabic system will be integrated into the greater education system because Arabic is just a language. Al-Lugatul Fakir. Chinese is a language. The people who build our roads don't speak English and they build the bridges. So what about the people who speak our language and they don't work at all? That's a problem. I've taught students in this country. This politics in this country has now become something else. People are talking about tribalism. It's a dangerous problem. It must be addressed. Singapore has addressed it. Taiwan have addressed it. Do you know, even in China, they have different languages. They all don't speak Chinese. In fact, there is no language called Chinese. They speak Mandarin. Some of them speak Cantonese. Different languages. I'll come back again. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I'm jixing things up a little bit. So, Mr. Fati, you want to react to anybody's presentation? 2 minutes?
I just want to add up.
You still have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes, no problem. Like it's said here, reforms, that's what every government wants. But like I said before reforms, we need assessment. Gambia, we need to digitalize things. If you look at other countries, everything turned from paper to digital. That's a very, very important issue we need to work on. Because we cannot sit down and be looking at our offices using papers to collect data. That is something that is very, 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 very dangerous. We need to digitalize. We need technology to work effectively. Like I was saying, I am a youth. I think I'm the youngest among all the political leaders. The youths need to be considered in this country. If you look at sport is one of the most lucrative business right now in this country. But is the government supporting sports? We have qualified for the African Cup of Nations the first time. But even the preparations are yet to be done. Because why? They don't know the value of sports in this country. So in our first day in office, we'll try to bring all these things on board. We are not going to say that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, because 100 days is like three months, 10 days.
In fact, 2 minutes has just exhausted.
Yes, let me just add up 1 minute. You see,
no, you can borrow one of your 2 minutes.
No problem. Give me that 2 minutes.
Then go.
Yes, that 100 days in office, I think it's a little bit short term. You don't have to come up with big plans. What you have to do is analyze the situation. Look at how the country is moving. What is needed in this country? Why is this country not moving? See, you go to Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau isn't moving. Why is this country not going? If we the people are the problem, let's try to settle it down. If it is the government, let's try to sit down and know our lapses and we move on. I think that is something that we need to concentrate on. We need to research. We need to know our priorities. We need to know what is really needed for this country. I think that's a very, very important thing to do. But coming up here with big ideas, you are going to be like the 2016 coalition members. They went to office, they couldn't do anything because what proper handing over was not done. So I think this country needs a big problem. If Banjul, the capital, is the problem, let's move the capital out of Banjul to Brufut or somewhere else. I think that's something we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Fati. Mr. Jeng, any reactions in 2 minutes to any of the presentations?
Actually, I'll be proactive here, because we have realities that we're facing. And I think we are a bit distracted from the realities of this world right now. We are in the hands of this pandemic. The world is gripped by this pandemic. And the economy of the world is highly affected by this pandemic. So I think if we have to focus our energies, it has to be on what has to be done to be able to recover from the aftermath of this pandemic, because it has come to stay. COVID-19 is not here to go, it is here to stay. So to accommodate it is very expensive, and I think it needs some level of collaboration and connection with what goes around the world right now as we speak. There are activities that are going on around the world, trying to find solutions and means, because there are no solutions yet, to be able to take care of this pandemic. Because at the end of the day, all these, giant producers around the world are hit hard, and we as a poor country in Africa will be affected more. I think looking at the first 100 days or, being in office, I think the focus here is what exactly should we start doing within our tenure in office, because you're not only there for 100 days, you are there for a period of time where the country needs you, because right now the country needs a savior. We are sinking. So I think, like I rightly mentioned in the beginning, one has to focus on exactly what can be done. We look at the sectors of this country that really brings income to this country. GRA, the Gambia Ports Authority. And I think there should be...
You want to take your first 2 minutes?
Actually, I hate boring. I don't want to take anything. So I will lay my finger on this.
Okay, then let's put the finger lay on it. I think that works. Now, we're going to go back. I owe you 4 minutes? Or it will be 6, actually. I don't think you took the first one. Mr. Jassy, one of the biggest revenue base for this country has been our groundnuts. Now, we understand aflatoxin has been a case with our groundnuts. So people are not buying our groundnuts, they don't appreciate it. We know the tourism sector is also a big revenue earner for this country. That also, because of COVID-19, as Mr. Jeng has alluded to earlier, has affected it. In your first 100 days, what would you do for the Gambian farmer and the operator in the tourism industry to bring about meaningful change to not just the economy, but put a few dollars in their pockets?
First of all, we have to face reality that the Gambia has relied on agriculture for over 56 years, and we clearly have not succeeded in that sector. Many projects have come and failed, the Nari, the Jahali Pasha, and so on and so forth. I think the time has come for the Gambia to shift, do a paradigm shift. We shift from agriculture to entrepreneurship. You see, I think we need to encourage our local content by giving opportunity through tax breaks and other incentives to the local owned companies, such as TAF Construction, such as people like Mohamed Jah, people like Alpha Barry, the Idrissa Jobs, and so on and so forth. We can't continue this road of trying to produce groundnuts because it's not going to solve our problems. We have to start looking at how best we can shift some of these people who grow groundnuts into something else, like cashew nuts. Cashew nuts are a much better cash crop than groundnuts are. In the United States here, there are single farms that produce more groundnuts than Gambia and Senegal roll into one. So what's the point in fighting this groundnut thing when we know for 56 years it has failed? I would look at a paradigm shift. I would shift our national focus to producing entrepreneurs within the Gambia, especially within the tourism sector, in hotel ownership, restaurants,
Thank you, sir.
Other areas that support the tourism sector. And also come up with tax incentives that would encourage not kill these local businesses.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I think you made a point that we need to have the debate on. Mr. Kuran, do you agree that groundnut should not be the dependable product for the Gambia, that we need to now diversify, and to what Mr. Jassy is saying, go maybe to cashew growing instead of groundnuts? Do you agree, yes or no, and your defense?
I think he did mention agriculture for me is still central to the economy and the future of the Gambia because of the nature of the country. I think the problem of agriculture is there is this report, an international report called The Paradox of Water in the Gambia, that a country with so much water is still having a problem of drinking water. So they may fee, Ibo town, nga gas tuti rek, lan more ñew, ndox, Banjul, Makati, everywhere there is water. River Gambia is so abundant. There is a problem of water, and the problem of water is a problem of investment, and that transcends over all of the agricultural sector. So the farmers
forget the groundnut and go into something, yes, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you see, groundnut in the Gambia, don't want to vigil. You understand?
Yes.
Most of the time, people producing groundnut now for domestic consumption.
But if the aflatoxin is there, it still affects the domoda eaters.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the medical reasons are there,
yeah,
and I don't think that will phase out it, but groundnut still can be made into so many forms. It can be processed. You find groundnut on the supermarket.
So we continue with our groundnuts.
You've been in England. You know how much peanut sells for in London on the supermarket. So I am not completely in for eradication of the peanut. I am in for, yes, I would agree with Mr. Jassy, that diversification is important, not only in agriculture or food production, but also in animal husbandry. It is very important. But what I'm trying to say, there is a genetic problem, a generic problem. And that generic problem is the problem of investment, water, and investment for the farmers.
All right, we'll come back to you on investment potentials of the country.
Thank you.
Mr. J, you started talking about the pandemic. Growth for this country was going. 2019, we were up there. 2020, it starts to come down. What will you do in your first 100 days, bearing in mind COVID-19, but bring about economic prosperity?
Actually, in every situation, you know, you need an approach to the problem. And I think there should be prognosis first before diagnosis. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I will do a technical audit. Something is wrong somewhere. Once that is detected, all we do is devise our plans and connect with the international world, because there is a global crusade, you know, to resuscitate the economic situation right now, because it has drowned, you know. So like I mentioned in my first 100 days, because it's not something that I believe in, but I will have to succumb to it. In my first 100 days, I will make sure I will have an economic reform summit, you know, and in this reform,
what would that summit entail? Who will be there?
Actually, I will tap into the international world. Right now, there is the OECD. You know, they are doing a lot, you know, regarding the COVID-19, and globally, the UNDP, and other sectors.
Well, in 2017, 2018, we did a major investment drive with the EU. We were promised 1 billion euros. Where's that money? Is the money here or not? And what difference would yours bring?
Actually, doing a technical audit, when we do monetary audit, you might end up catching thieves. And when you do a technical audit, you might identify incompetence.
Are you saying corruption is a problem in the Gambia?
Actually, corruption is one thing, but incompetence also is something that's really, really affecting us. So
okay. We'll come back to you. You spent more than 2 minutes for a reason, but we'll give everybody equal opportunity to do that. Kitabu, you said you are the youngest person running for the office of the President of the Gambia.
Yes.
And that being the case, there is a discussion now between two elements. Remittances, meaning monies that are incoming into the Gambia, and we are so dependent on them now, and the back way.
Yes.
People are saying the back way boys, when they finally reach to Europe, they're sending so much money. It's also contributing to the economy.
Yeah.
So your first 100 days, are you going to say no to the back way boys, and how will you run your economy?
Mr. Drame, my 400 days, like I said before, I don't think the concentration should be on the 400 days. You need to think of the government generally. But looking at the affairs of the youth, like I said, I'm a youth. Leaving this country to travel out is something that we need to look at, because it's not a good sign, and it's not something that is very, very good for our country.
So you will stop the back way?
Yes, I will stop. Because if every country needs its productive citizens, and it's very, very important for we to, sit with the youth. We need to know their problem. We need to know what is going on. Why are they leaving the country? That's why our first 100 days is still will be based on situation analysis. We need to know what is the problem. If it is the system, let's try to sit down and arrange things and make sure what will work for the country be something that we look at. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jassy, we're coming back to you in the US, and one thing that we don't lack in this country is all of these ideas. We've had economic summit. We've had, we're going to do a prognosis before we do a diagnose and before we do the curing. We've had all of these beautiful ideas, not different from what we had in 2017. All the commissions were set up. The Gambians are promised big things, but you politicians don't deliver. Why should we trust Tamsu Jassy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame. If you look at myself and my three colleagues, none of us resembles Adam Barrow. That by itself is a start for change. When you blame incoming politicians for the fault of those that were there before, you are doing wrong. What you do is you hold the system accountable. You make sure that politicians that come into office do what they say they're supposed to do. If, for instance, they say they're going to stay for 5 years, let them stay for 5 years. If it is 3 years, and that even though it's not in the Constitution, it is the character that matters, the character of the individual. I read somewhere in an Islamic literature book that says that we spend so much time paying attention in the academic qualifications and no time whatsoever on the character of the individual. It's about time we start putting character into the equation, because it is people of good character that keep their word that would decide to govern in the manner in which the people expect to be governed. Politicians will come and go, and they will always be there. We cannot do without them. It is the duty of the Gambian people, or any people whatsoever, to make sure that they have the right people and hold them accountable. And when they do what they're supposed to do, they stay in office for the term that they're supposed to do. And when they don't, they don't. Another thing I would like to point out here is that I was under the impression that we are supposed to talk about what we do in 100 days. A lot of what was said cannot possibly happen in 100 days. So as a police officer, I always like to stick with the law. I always like to stick with the rules. So that's why I'm sticking myself to the 100-day period and not talk about anything outside of those 100 days. So let me make this clear to the Gambian people. And if I need to borrow time, please let me know, because I intend to finish this statement. My intention.
We owe you 4 minutes. You can take the first 2. You can take the second 2 minutes.
Okay. My intention is this. Everything in the Gambia right now is in shambles. We must have an assessment of the situation of every sector, and only professionals in that sector will do it, not politicians. So I, as a politician, I will ensure that for each sector, there is a team of qualified personnel made up of purely Gambians who would look at this, the sector, analyze it, come up with solutions, short-term, long-term, and then a collection of all this will be presented to the Gambian people as our way forward. That way, everyone would be on the same page. But a lot of what was said so far cannot possibly happen in 6 months, let alone 3 months. And if I may also suggest that next time we have a debate to talk about economic policies, you're going to need a lot more than 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. We will bear that in mind. We're coming back to you, Mr. Kuran, now. I've had a couple of suggestions from some people that are familiar with economy and all of these reforms to help me guide some of the questioning. Of course, we know the media are here. If we organize ourselves, we'll also do a question and answer session with the media to ask you guys directly. I would, if we are all agreeable to this, none of you have a party structure. So that means media engagement is going to be your biggest tool. So if you will agree, we'll extend this a bit so people will interact with you intimately and get to understand your plans and your activities, because you may not be able to have the opportunity that the parties have to do rallies all over the country, etc. Only if you agree. So we'll stretch it a little bit so the media also can really have that interaction with you and ask all the questions now that we have the attention of the country focused on you, which I think will be a great thing to do. But having said that, I've had some help. I'm not going to name names because somebody may kill me for not giving me permission to do that. So, the debt burden on the country is really high, Mr. Kuran. Gambia owes a lot of money, and the servicing of debt itself is what's really frustrating our country. What will you do to manage what we have to pay and also what we have to nyam-nyam?
What should we do? Good question. Well, thank you very much. I run on the platform for Youth for Change, and I can tell you we have a very good structure, better than so many one-man parties in this country. So, Mr. Drame, the question is very important because debt is a critical issue. Between 1965 and 2016, two presidents, Jawara and Yahya Jammeh, borrowed $1 billion. $50 billion. Now, that is not a problem. You know what's the problem? Between 2016 and 2021, if you vote Adama Barrow in, he is already on his way, on a fast track, in a bus, about to borrow $1 billion. That underlines the seriousness of debt. The coalition government is about to borrow $1 billion. Serious problem. What's the problem of debt? There is what is called in economics the crowding out effect. If you borrow money through the central bank, internally and outside, there is interest that is put on it. That interest is a burden for the government. We have to pay it. We, the taxpayers, have to pay it. They have in the provinces. I'm just coming from the provinces today. If you time to pay Nyatanko, they will come and sell your golo, and you pay your sareto, and you pay. Serious problem. So the taxpayer is on the burden. The crowding out effect is that when the government borrows, the government is always given priority. It takes all the money from the commercial banks into the central bank to finance government expenditure. The businessman, I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur in education. The businessman cannot borrow. You want to borrow, the bank is asking you for 20%. Who in this room can borrow money at 20%, go outside Serakunda market and make money? That is why so many businesses in Gambia who borrow from banks are going bust. Why? Because government is spending and borrowing. Why? Because the president is spending and spending and spending. So the problem of debt is about debt management. How do you manage debt? The first thing you do with debt management is reduce your discretionary expenditure. Why do you have to travel with 100 vehicles, fuel, V8 they call them, isn't it? V8. Ika essential minako geo. That is a lot of money for the people. So many discretionary expenses must be cut down. There is no magic, my friends. If your government is spending and we are clapping and eating benachin, there will be more debt. Some of those debts will be paid in 50 years' time. Your great-grandchildren will pay them. So spend less. Second problem, there is an expenditure side I talked about just now. I will borrow 2 more minutes. Okay. There is an expenditure side. There is also the income side. What is coming in? That has to be managed also, so that government will receive what it is supposed to receive. Now that comes back to what people call systems change. There has been no system change. Most people, you ask them what is systems change, they still take you back to the same question. Munam system change, inko system change, munam system change, inko system change. No. There are 2 kinds of system. I started at the beginning of my speech. There is a natural systems, like your digestive system, your respiratory system, they are natural. The solar system is natural. They're from God. وَأَيَّةٌ لَهُمْ اللَّيْلٌ. It is described in the Quran. You cannot change them. But social and economic systems are flexible. They are not perfect. So we don't want parties to come here and tell us our solution is socialism. It is outdated. It will never come back in the main stage in this world. It is not. The solution is entrepreneurship and investment in our people. Youth for Change is saying that invest in the youth. I've been in education for 20 years. We call for a government to mobilize 500,000 youths of this country and give them jobs and give them proper education. That way we can change this country and earn revenue. Thank you.
If a teacher becomes a politician, my goodness, we know what that means. Now, Mr. Fati Kitabu, 83.1% of our GDP in 2020 is public debt. 83.1. Each $1, 83.1 butut mujuloled. How will you manage that if you become president?
Like I said earlier, that, like Mr. Kura said, is a problem in this country. Since the previous government till now, we are just seeing debt all the time. And what are we doing to make sure we subsequently help the country recover from that? I think that cannot be said in the first 100 days. But we need to invest, because we haven't grants outside, but are we investing that money? We are not doing that. So investment is a problem in this country, because the youth today, like I always say this, if it comes to economy, agriculture is a very, very important way to achieve, to get money, or if you have money from outside, to invest in agriculture. So, but if to invest in agriculture, what you need to know, we need to stop graduating extension officers. Let's try to focus on investing in youths to do large-scale farming, to go into animal husbandry, to do lots of things, so that the debt we are talking about will go down, and we'll be able to help the country grow, and will be food sufficient in the next few years.
Thank you.
But it's going to be very, very hard to recover from the debt if we don't actually invest what we have from outside.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fati. Mr. Jang, you made one interesting point earlier. You hate to borrow. You don't like to owe. Now, the question is, what specifically will your administration do to reduce the debt burden in the country?
Haruna, Gambia belongs to the HIPC, like the highly indebted poor countries. And there are certain privileges that we can enjoy, you know, and all they're looking for, you know, for us as a country and as a government, you know, to have fiscal responsibility. You know, we have to be responsible, because no matter how much money you pour into an administration, you know, if we don't have people, you know, who put country first, you know, there will be mismanagement and there will be corruption. So I think we have to put up anti-corruption measures. We need to have value for money, because if certain monies, flow in between us and government collects and distributes, during the process of collecting and distributing, if we have corrupt officials, who tamper with certain monies, at the end of the day, we will always, have the need for money. And when there is need for money, all we do is stretch our hands and borrow. And every time you stretch your hand, there will be strings attached. That is this interest. So I think what we should focus on is to have, people who are patriots into the system, of our governance, and we should display a high level of character ethic, as my colleague, rightly mentioned. And as human beings, we all have needs. Everybody into the sector of governance is a father, is a husband, and have their own needs. So that survival neuron is there. And when you look at the salary levels, at the end of the day, if the guy does not have integrity or the woman doesn't have integrity in that position, whenever you have the chance to loot or mismanage or funnel funds, you're going to, and who's going to suffer from it is the state. I think it all boils down to us in the system. At the end of the day, it's two robots interacting with each other. We humans, we are organic robots, and the systems in place are placed there by us. So I think the problem is us, and the solution is also us. I think we need to really look at ourselves deep, and put country first, to be able to take this country to the next level.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Jassy, are you with us? Mr. Jassy, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank God for internet. DK Telecoms is powering us tonight. They are the reason you are on with us. So thank you so much, DK Telecoms, for the internet service today. Mr. Jassy, one of the things about Gambia and Gambians is what belongs to everybody essentially belongs to nobody. That being the case, state-owned enterprises don't tend to do well because of ownership issues. What structures do you believe your government will put in place to ensure state-owned enterprises will function and make profit?
First of all, let me give you an analogy here. If you are sent to the well to draw water in a pail that's full of holes, what is the likelihood that you'll be able to take any water back home? Chances are zero. The water is our resources. The pail is our nation. The holes is corruption. We are losing a lot in corruption. There is no way in the world where when people are left alone and not held accountable, they try to do the best they can. If you understand people, once they are being supervised, once they know they've been looked at, once they know they're being held accountable, they tend to behave better. Accountability is what's lacking in our government. We must come up with a system in every sector that holds every government official accountable. And when you deviate from government procedures, you are held accountable. For instance, not long ago, we heard of a situation in which it cost Gambia taxpayers over $2 million to transport 3 boxes of COVID-19 vaccines from Guinea-Bissau to the Gambia, something I could have done in my car for free. Up to today, we haven't had much about that case anymore. We are encouraging corruption because we are not holding anyone accountable, as if to say those who should be taking the responsibility of holding people accountable are themselves involved in it. We need a new government. We need a new system that would come in and create a new financial instructions. The old one we've been using is certainly not working. And we must have a culture of holding people accountable when they do wrong in the public sector. Otherwise, we will continue to do things as they're being done, which is not helping anyone.
Thank you.
And this is exactly, I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
And this is exactly why we keep failing. People get away with what they do. The behavior is reinforced, making them think I can do it again and get away with it. John sees the same thing and does it. Fatu sees the same thing and does it. And it becomes a natural culture. We are a very corrupt society, and that needs to stop. We need a government that would focus on this, and that is why I think someone with the mentality of law enforcement, of obeying the law, should be the leader in order to at least set the record straight by at least setting the example that once the law is created, it will be enforced by all means. If you observe my participation in this, I am sticking within what I believe is the parameters of our 100 days, because that's the rule you set. That's the rule I want to follow. This is my nature.
Thank you, sir.
And this is exactly what I'll try to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Kitabu, now the state-owned enterprises, what will you do to ensure they are profitable?
Actually, if looking at our situation right now, most of our state-owned enterprises are not profitable because, like I said before, corruption is a problem in this country. And if corruption is a problem, we don't have laws to tackle corruption, we are still going to have the same problem. Like, if we are elected into office, what we will do is, we will come up with people who have the sense of nationalism to make sure they see the country first, because that's the most important thing. Today, we need to invest. The country needs money. But how do the country have money? But the problem is, like I said, we need assessment in every sector. We need to know the people working there. Is there any transparency in that place? What are the mechanisms we need to put at that place to make sure we earn money from those places? So to just sit down and say that we're going to do this in this sector, we're going to do this in this sector, I believe in assessment first. We need to know the place. We need to know what is in the places, you see. So if you do that, I believe we might see the Sulu Saji Malu in that place. Because that's the problem. Most of these offices, we have people that are not interested in seeing the Gambia move forward. Mm-hmm. So for the Gambia to be successful, we need patriotic citizens to be able to run offices and to be able to push the country forward. But if we don't have that, we still have the same problem, corruption and mismanagement. We won't go anywhere. So that's my stake, and that's where I stand.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kuram, foreign direct investment. Africa continues to be an high interest destination for foreign direct investments, for all sorts of investments, in fact, because of the high level risks, the instabilities, non-performance of economies, etc. In your first 100 days, what sort of confidence will you want to inject so that foreign direct investment becomes a living example in your government?
Thank you. I think foreign direct investment is number one of the key things that you need to boost your economy up. We've seen the examples in the NICs, the newly industrialized countries in South Korea, Taiwan, etc., Singapore. Foreign direct investment plays a critical role. Now, a foreign investor coming with the money obviously is not a fool. And Gambians or Africans must not think that a Tuareg coming with money actually has just got money and he doesn't know what to do with it. These people do a lot of research on a country. If you want to come to the Gambia to invest, you probably start with the internet, free data, and then you research on the country. Then you will begin to see a lot of things even before you come in, and then most of the time they come and ask you questions, the answers for which they already know. So the key to attract foreign direct investment is to build a meritocratic system. I said that government and economic social systems are dynamic systems. They are not like natural systems. So we said meritocracy is the key, right? If you have a society in which people get things according to who they are or who they know, obviously your system is not meritocratic, and any foreign investor who that comes in is usually put off by 10%. Give me 10%. And a small cut be, right? Not 10% right? Or 10% what like a foreign direct investment for. Tubawo bala corona tle nyadile a dundi banko kang. Na futa that bunda follow na ko konko e kay 10%. Konkong $1,000. It cannot. My friend here is, I had a small chat with him, and he's an investor, and he will tell you, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Even though I'm not a foreign direct investor, but I've been in other countries. It is very frustrating. So, to get your people coming to invest in your country, you must clean up your system. You must have a system in which people can access information, people can be able to register their businesses, right, without any problems. People can be able to do transactions with minimum amount of cost and time. It has to be efficient. To make a government efficient, I started by mentioning a number of things. For example, information in our government is lacking. They cannot even tell you how many staff they have in the civil service or public service, not to talk about how many citizens there are there. Data is very, very lacking. And e-government, another point, one more minute. Another point, Mr. Drame, is Mr. Soto is a Nobel Prize winning author, and he's an economist. He said that if you want to remove poverty, one of the key things you have to do is look at the land of the country. In this country here, only Banjul and Serakunda, Brikama have got a lease land. What is the problem? What is a lease? Is just a paper. Why can't we lease the whole country? If you don't lease the guy who is in Janjambure or URD, you don't lease his land, he cannot even borrow $1,000 from the bank. Because the bank tells him, I need a lease document. So what's the problem with the lease document? It's just a piece of paper. Why can't they give everybody, just like an ID card, lease every land in this country? If you don't lease in America, in England, in Europe, they lease every single inch of those countries that are 1,000 times bigger than Gambia. Every single piece of land in Ohio or New York is leased. A farmer in Ohio can borrow money just like a flat owner in New York. What about Gambia? People have 10,000 acres in Kiang, and they can't do nothing about it. They will remain poor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I let you go on a little bit longer than you should, because you were making a valid point, and we will agree. But we'll give the same opportunity to all of the participants here if they are on the same trajectory, naturally. Mr. Jeng, before we hand over to the journalists here to ask questions in relation to presentations so far made in the last hour, would you agree that corruption is the biggest economic challenge of this country? Yes or no, and why?
Actually, I would agree, and we all know where corruption stems from. You know, Gambia is literally a poor country, and everybody is on the survival mode. And the same officials who made it to the top, you know, are the same individuals, you know, who are on the lower rung of the ladder. So obviously, if they see themselves on top of the ladder, you know, definitely they will survive. You know, like in Wolof, you know, defuñ ko liggéey kaay tedde kaay lañ ko def. You know, and if you see survival, you know, obviously you will be corrupt. You know, I will definitely agree. And we have a lot of things that are affecting us, you know, other than corruption, you know, politics, you know, and a high level of distraction, you know, from focusing on the job to be done. You know, because when you look at recently, you know, before the current president, you know, set up a political party, you know, shortly after he set up the political party that he is running now, that was when the country, you know, started going deep down the drain. You know, because at the end of the day, it distracts him, you know, from his responsibilities, you know, in office. So we have a whole variety of issues that are really affecting us. You know, and it's a pity, Haruna. I will go back to COVID-19. You know, we are about to encounter a global crisis that if you don't put our acts together, you know, the country will witness something very drastic. You know, so I think we should really focus, you know, on the job to be done. You know, to get the country, you know, from the level that it is, you know, psycho-emotionally, economically and socially, So that's my point.
Thank you so much. Ablai Jawa is here with 2 microphones. We will go around. If any reporters, journalists, presenters, any media house has any questions, we will change the rules slightly. We used to say you must specifically ask a specific person a question, but let every reporter, any journalist ask any participant any question, and we will guide their responses. Ask a direct question, introduce yourself, your media house, and shoot a question directly to any of them. Anybody with questions, or you rather we wait to the end entirely? Before we go, is your hand up? Okay, there's somebody here. Okay, then go ahead, Abla. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
It will be great if you would stand up so we could also see you and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Alkali Cham. I am independent observer, but I'll use this to ask a question. To ensure economic growth, one very bad element that we need to trim completely is to fight corruption. Corruption is something that is trying to weaken our development as a country. So I want to ask the presidential aspirants, what mechanisms or strategies would you put in place to ensure that this ill practice is completely expunged from our public sector? Thank you.
Who do you want to respond?
Specifically, Mr. Kurang, who is economist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm also an accountant, and this is a very relevant topic. That's why I said, get me voted, because I'm the only chartered accountant.
You are campaigning, sir. Could we answer the guy?
All right. Now, corruption obviously is a serious problem, because we've seen so many countries with oil, gold, and diamond, and they are still in the doldrums because of corruption. So what do you do to eliminate corruption? I think, obviously, like I said, corruption starts with the president. In the Gambia, everything starts with the president. And the president must admit that. We are not electing a party. The Constitution gives the mandate not to a party, it gives the mandate to a president. So the ball ends and starts with the president. And people said, the first thing you must do to tell us that your hands are clean, declare your assets. That's the beginning. Because if you don't, then there will always be some questions that cannot be answered. How much did you have before you become president? And how much did you have 5 years later? If that question cannot be answered, you cannot eliminate corruption. A president who cannot do that will not be. So, corruption again is about systems. People talk about systems. I said it in my speech here. Systems are very interesting because you have systems and subsystems. The whole government is a system, but we have got departments, ministries, etc. A system is a combination of things. Transparency is another factor apart from the presidential responsibility and declaration. Transparency, Mr. Drame. A transparent government. How much do we are very glad to welcome the recent bill in the National Assembly, called the Information Act, that people can ask questions. But we know that's not the end. There is still more and more that needs to be done in order to be able to solve it in transparency. Information must come out, and it must come out in time. Corruption, people say, also is a culture. But I don't think it is any different in any country, right? In China, in so many other countries where they have developed, I think they have been able to tackle corruption, but it starts with the top. So really, the question comes back to normal. Our constitution wants to eliminate corruption, but it is also telling the citizens to elect somebody who they think is going to remove corruption. I think, that's a very important question.
Do you feel your question is answered? Partially.
Partially. What's left?
You can ask him to follow up.
Which part?
Please take the mic.
What specifically you, as the president, that you will do to fight that corruption?
Yes.
Good question. First thing, I will declare my assets on my first day in office. 1. 2, I will conduct an audit. There is already an audit, a financial audit on all the institutions. Most of the institutions in this country, it is lying there on the desk of the president. I will look at that report called the Jane Commission. And then if I have declared my asset and I've looked at that report, I think that report need to be. Because the main reason for the implementation of the Janek Commission was not a political reason. It was to remove corruption in this country, to set examples. Now we have parties who have got members that are indicted by that commission, and they ask, how do you expect those parties to come and eliminate corruption when their key members are already indicted by that commission? Think about it.
Okay, we go.
So an independent candidate is the solution now. The power is with the president, not with the party.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang. You advocate for independent candidates. Ablai Jawa is around with the mics. Yeah.
Is the law still applicable for people that are from party or that came with their presidential aspirant?
Let the journalists ask.
Okay, strictly for the journalists.
This media is our media people.
Okay.
If you are coming with a political party, you will not ask questions, because you'll ask your president a question. So let's go with the media guys. Radio, TV, newspaper.
Assalamu alaikum.
Mr. Juve, you have to stand up. Hi.
I wanted to look at something.
Why are you bluffing?
I need my computer.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so if you can. Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Modlamin Juve of Taranga FM Radio. Mr. Haruna, if you would allow me, I would want all of them to answer the questions that I am going to put forward. If that
then
is
let's start
allowed.
with Mr. Jassy. He has not spoken in a while.
Okay, so 3 questions I have actually. One is they've all been talking about corruption, and they've not made mention of the National Audit Office. This is an office that is established to look at the account of government, to look at everything that is happening. So I have seen something very interesting, and I want to know how they're going to address that in their first 100 days in office. The 2016 report, we've seen that at least 17 payments amounting or totaling to more than $72 million were made without adequate supporting documents. We've seen also 59 million plus another 40 million, petty cash that they spent, some of the embassies spent, and then there were no justification to those spendings. And when you look at the ministers also, unpaid loans amounting to $6.5 million, just to get the facts that corruption is something happening, even though they've been talking about it without evidence, pointing out things that we can look at. How are you going to address some of these things highlighted by the National Audit Office? That is one. Can I move to the next question?
Let's have them answer. They cannot keep track. It's long enough already. Mr. Jassy, could you respond to that?
All right, thank you very much. You see, many people may wonder why the international community has focused so much of their attention on security sector reforms. You see, it's a simple fact. This is a simple thing. International experts, development experts, have asserted that you must have an effective, efficient, equitable, and accountable policing within the country. That way you can sustain all your socio-economic and political developments. We have excellent laws. We have excellent regulations and all. What we lack in the Gambia is enforcement. We do not enforce any of those. For each and every one of those violations that the gentleman mentioned, there are consequences that should have followed, but there was no enforcement, which means we reinforce the corrupt behavior. Had someone been identified, apprehended, and prosecuted, and if found guilty, sentenced by the court to what was appropriate, it would send a clear signal to others that this behavior is unacceptable. If I know, and if anyone knows for a fact, that they can take money and get away with it, the chances are, in most cases, they'll do so. So it's not a matter of creating anything new, it's a matter of just enforcing the laws that are in place. That would go a long way in addressing all of the corruption. And we can also begin to immediately utilize technology in terms of electronic financial transactions, ensuring that within the first 18 months in office, my government will make sure that cash handling in the Gambia government will be down by 50%. And the next 1 year, 6 months, the next 18 months, it will be 100%. Many countries are fighting corruption by simply going into electronic transactions. This is what we need to do. We need to stop piling cash in the office for someone to take it home. And because electronically, once you put your hand into the cookie jar, you leave prints. Footprints are left behind. We can trace the money back to whoever took it. And then prosecution can take place. The appropriate action will be taken and the individual will be held accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem. We are not enforcing our laws. We have very good laws. Like Mr. Kurang, he was looking at it from an economic standpoint, but I'm looking at it from a law enforcement standpoint. I guess that goes to say that if the only tool you can use is a hammer, you tend to see everything as a nail. He's looking at it from the economic standpoint. I'm looking at it from the law enforcement standpoint. That tells us we need all of these efforts to come together. There isn't no one solution. It's a collective, it's a collection of solutions to solve the problem.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Jeng, you wanted everybody to respond to that question, then we come to the second. Is that what you said? Or you have a specific question for everyone?
Maybe now I can just go to my second question for the other candidates.
Okay.
I think this.
Who, Jeng?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
on the question of corruption, you know,
okay.
I think.
Let us wait for him to ask the question, and then you can make it pregnant.
Okay.
Yes.
this year, the government spent $524 million to import fertilizer into the country, okay, and then subsidize it. So farmers were supposed to buy fertilizer at $700. Last year, they brought 11,000 tons. This year, 20,000 tons. Yet, farmers are still crying that they did not receive enough fertilizer, okay? A good number was exported to other countries. How do you think we can solve this problem? Because this is as perennial as the grass. It happens every year, every farming season. You can ask the farmers, this is a persistent problem. So how can you address that, Mr. Jeng, in your first 100 days?
Actually, you see, when it comes to corruption, I think we have to use a broad approach, because at the end of the day, you're talking about human beings. You know, we have our behaviors and we have our attitudes. And the same people that are involved in corrupt practices, they engage in corrupt practices simply because they have there's nothing that regulates them. You know, I think we should focus on prevention, detection, and we have some form of punishment, you know, if somebody is caught with doing corrupt practices. You know, I think looking at the whole system, there is no sector that you go and you will not find corrupt officials who are engaged into corruption, simply because there are no preventive measures, you know. And if you see somebody funnels money, because they have access to money, you know, as Mr. Jassy rightly mentioned, you know, we need to sift, you know, from the physical handling of cash, you know, into electronic, you know, way of dealing with money. So we have the banks, we make best use of them, you know, and who's going to suffer is the ones that are supposed to benefit from these things, you know, from people who are put in position, you know, to be able to take care of them. But at the end of the day, the farmer is just equal to the guy in the office. At the end of the day, they're all, you know, poor, and they're all hustling, they all have families, you know, and they're all surviving. So it's just survival of the fittest. So I think there should be very strict measures that are put in place, you know, to detect, you know, to prevent, you know, and to punish at the end of the day. So that's my stance.
Is that answered? Okay.
I go to
this question will be your last for the whole evening.
Really?
You've taken so much time.
Okay,
yes.
no problem. Last question.
Yes. So punch
Last,
anybody
to
hard
Mr.
with it.
Fati. Mr. Fati.
Yes.
We've seen in the Gambia, whenever the president is traveling, the public will be limited to use one way, and the other one would be reserved for the president. I want to know what your view is on this particular thing. Do you think that is a right thing to do, or you think there is a better way to do it? This is a problem that most Gambians are talking about. What's your take?
Thank you, Mr. Juve. That's a very important question. But I think I have to go back a little bit into a corruption issue because, like I usually say, we come mandingol ka fo nyamen tol karamunto dindingol tol dem problem. When we brought all these things in, this procurement, these kickbacks, and all this stuff, that's are the things, encouraging corruption in many offices. You need to go for your money in an office, they will push you to procurement. You go to procurement, somebody will tell you that you have to give me something for you to accept.
Answering Mr.
No,
Ju's
I'm coming.
Or you're going somewhere else?
No, I'm coming.
Please arrive. Answer his question, then I'll give you 2 more minutes. You talk about.
No, I will arrive. Like you said about the using of the one way, I don't think it's good for a system, because you are the president is the servant of the people. So using one way is like you're wasting money, you're wasting resources, you're wasting the time of the people. So in like development countries, you don't see things like that. But why in the Gambia, a country that needs to move forward, a country that needs development, and people are in the society, they have their daily bread through going in and out of the country. You have sick people coming from Basse to the combos. So if you use one way for the people, it's like you are disturbing a whole lot of people. So most of our development are not decentralized. You look at our hospitals, we have a problem. Somebody will be sick in Basse, he have to come to the combos. So coming to the combos, the president is going out. It's a problem when you use one way. It's just crazy, because I myself have been into that situation. I don't think it's proper for any president to do that kind of thing. It's even inhumane. It's very bad. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Juf, you give our mic back. But for purpose of clarity, Mr. Jassy, as a security expert, would you want to comment on that?
Certainly. There are 2 times that the president moves. And each time the president moves, there is a detailed plan. They know his itinerary. The security knows his itinerary. They are familiar with the route that he's taking or she's taking, and they plan accordingly. What fails in the Gambia is there is no good planning. What needs to happen is when the president is moving within the country just on his regular work as president, they can actually time it to where the roads would be closed, nothing more than 4 or 5 minutes before he arrives, and immediately open. But when he or she has a visiting guest, like a state visit from someone else, then their route is closed for a long duration and traffic is diverted. They would know that ahead of time, and such diversion would have been created with the traffic police assisting locals to go about their business with limited interruption. The reason for that is because we have to remember that when we have a visiting head of state in the country, there is a serious risk that that visitor may have an enemy that may come into our country to do harm to them. So we have to put up all of the security measures. We have to ensure that the guest comes in and leaves safely. It is not correct, the manner in which it is done. And when we go into security sector reforms, I have created a new unit within the Gambia Police Force that I would implement called the Gambia Police Force Highway Patrol Unit.
We'll get to security sector reform. We will get to security sector reform.
Okay. Yeah. Then I would save that for now. But like he said, it is a concern. Citizens must be put under consideration when the president moves. And it could be done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Juf, that would answer your question, right? Okay. Then let's move to another person.
It's okay?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sam Abob of Paradise TV. With your permission, sir, Mr. Drame, I would want to ask all these 4 candidates of these 3 questions, please.
You cannot do the Morjuf style. Ask a specific one, please.
Okay, to Mr. Jeng,
yeah.
What are your plans with your government in trying to invest in public transport?
Okay.
Yeah, if that is answered, I could ask the other 2 questions.
No, let's finish with him, then you do another question.
Okay.
If you ask too many questions at once, it's discouraging. Mm-hmm. What will you do about public transport? Assuming public transport is a problem, which I think it is, our drivers now will cut a single journey into 3 or 4. So you'll pay $10, descend, pay another 5 or $10, descend, another one. God behold, you're from Banjul and you're going to Brikama. Public transport and these van drivers and taxi drivers have made it impossible. Now, going to Bakau, you pay 2 fares or 3. Going to Sukuta, you're going to pay 3 fares to get to Sukuta from Serakunda. Before, there used to be 1. So public transport is what he's asking. What will you do about it?
Actually, we just need regulations and enforcement, as Mr. Jassy rightly mentioned. Because if a society is left free, to do whatever they want without any scrutiny, I think they will just do whatever they feel like doing. So all we need is just regulations, and enforcement. Thank you.
If I may make it clear,
to Kurang or Fati?
To Kurang, to Kurang now. Yeah. But I just want to adjust to Mr. Jeng.
You are not debating here. You're asking questions. If your question is not answered, you can re-ask the question.
Okay.
You're not debating.
Okay then. To Mr. Kurang, what is your plan, or what are your plans for your government when you're in office to help in any way abolish this so-called tribalist politics in the Gambia?
Thank you.
That's a good question, actually.
I think tribalist politics, as just like any other problem, need a diagnosis before the solution. We've seen it emerging, over recent years, and I think it's very obvious to ignore it as a society would be, very dangerous. But I think the main reason is because the politicians have nothing to tell us, have nothing to show for what they have done, have failed in the transition, or have failed to execute the social contract, so they turn to tribal sentiments. They turn to tribal sentiments to appeal to people's emotions instead of rationality. So, as a society, we are a country of Muslims and Christians, and I think we have to fall back on our basic religions. We know that each and every religion that we practice in this country is against discrimination. In Islam, it's obvious. In the Quran, it's highly stated. إِذَا رُجَّةٌ أَرْضٌ رَجًّا وَبُسَّةُ الْجِبَالٌ بَسًّا فَكَانَتُ هَبَّةً مُنْبَشَّةً وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثُلَاثَةً. On a day when the mountains shall become dust, there will be only 3 tribes. فَأَصْحَابٌ مَيْمَنَةٌ مَا أَصْحَابٌ مَيْمَنَةٌ. Where the people of the right. فَأَصْحَابٌ مَشْأَمَةٌ. Where the people of the right. وَالسَّابِقُونَ. There will be only 3 tribes. There will be no Mandingo or Wolof or Jola. So if you say you are a Muslim or you are a Christian, and you know that this wall is temporary, and you know that there will come a day when they ask you, are you a Mandingo? You will say, Ana Sabikun. You will deny your tribe. So what is the fuse about? So I think as citizens, we need to reject the politics. I am never afraid to address the issue. I was on the tour just recently, and a woman asked me, Ban het nga? I said to her, well, I speak Mandingo. My grandmother is Sonanjai, it's a Wolof. My surname is not Kurang. If I go out of Kudang, they call me Kurang. If I am in Kudang, they call me Seidi Kurang. My surname is a Tukulor surname. But I told her, look, man ragaluma ben het si dekabi. I can tell any het anything because I train 20,000 people. I never discriminate. No student will come forward and tell you I ever ask them what is your tribe. So what is tribe? I'm not ragaluma ben het. As a president, I will execute, and then I am advocating for a national. I have seen how people solve this. So they may Liberia, nyep English lanje laga. They call it Labran English. So they may Sierra Leone, English lanje laga. Singapore, English. America, English. All right, there is a solution, my friend. It cannot be Mandingo or Fula. It has to be something that is development and that will connect us to the outside world. We have to make our children speak English. That will eliminate it. So there has to be a government, a president coming in, must have practical steps, not just preaching the scriptures will solve this problem. This needs practical problem. In Rwanda, in Singapore, Gambia, we are nice. The Jolas are Sanawiya with Serers, isn't it? The Fulas are Sanawiya with Jolas. But still they still kill each other. 20 years ago, we saw in the TRRC. But then, so what is the solution? In Singapore, if you talk about tribe, you have a problem. They have the National Security Act in public. In Rwanda, in public. We need to be more serious, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kura. Now your final question. To Mr. Fati now,
and,
I suppose.
And Mr. Jassy.
Oh, Mr. Jassy.
Both
okay.
of them, to both of them. If both of
Jassy
them could answer
first
this.
or Fati first?
Fati first and close with Jassy.
My friend, ask one question final now.
It's
Which
one in two.
Choose
or
one.
2 in 1, yeah.
Choose one person and one question.
Okay.
There are other people wanting to ask questions.
I would love Mr. Fati to answer this question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Fati, we will want to know what are your plans for your government, or what are your plans with your government in decentralizing our public offices? Because we could see all offices are in Banjul, which lead to a lot of traffic jams and the like. So what are your plans?
Thank you so much. That's a very important question. That's a big problem we are facing in the Gambia. If we take office, in our first 100 days, we will try to invite the alcalos and the CFOs and the chairmen, the local government. We'll invite them for a meeting so that we can decentralize the development plans, because it's very, very important. You look at other countries, like I usually say this, in America, I didn't go to America, but I believe somebody can be born in California and he will grow up in California without going to Texas. Because what is in California is in Texas. You have the same, amenities, the same infrastructure, the same development. So the same thing should happen for the Gambia. What we need in the combos is what we should need in the villages. So it's very, very important to decentralize. At least we take the Minister of Environment to the URR, Minister of Agriculture to the CRR. I think that those are things that we need to do, because in other countries, people will drive 1 hour, 2 hours to go to work in a place. So Gambia is too small. So we can do that. We can decentralize and try to, involve the whole country into development. Because now, if you look at it, some of the villages are even stagnant. More member kaburoto more le fonsi ata sade kono molti, because mem more be botan and sando to nada si kombo jang. So munatina, because ikakaram kaw sando to le do kudulata sotlaje, you have to come back to the town. So the most important thing is, let's try to decentralize. Let's try to create universities in the villages. Let's try to open up arms to make sure we have companies and other things in the villages, so that people can stay in Jara, in Badibu, in Kiang. It's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kitabu. Ablai, maybe we have one more so we can go into security sector reform. We have done 90 minutes.
Yes.
You want to be the last person? Okay, single questions directly. Yes, Ugly Boy, who's going first?
Yes, my name is Fatu Samba.
Oh, is that your name? Okay.
Yes, that's my name.
Okay.
Dama laajte suma question bi si Olof. Si yéen ñëpp ñu bari ñu ngi wax ne Aboubacar Jeng, Kura, Fati ak Jassy da ngeen bugg a just taxaw ku nekk independent candidate suñ demee ba si kanam ngeen mun a léngatoo ak yeneen parties. ñu bëgg a xam rek ñeneen yu bari ñu ne da ngeen ko def ku get fame, ñeneen ñi ñu ne da ngeen ko def not because of anything, parce que Gambian si xamul leen. Ma bëgg rek nga wax Gambian si ndax yéen da ngeen def lii ku fame, ndax di ngeen def any coalition ak any party, because ñu bari ñu ngi wax ne few parties rek leen xam si Gambia. Yéen ñu toog fii kenn xamut leen, ñu bari sax amul interest si debate. Ma bëgg a xam rek lan mooy seen tontu si loolu. Jërëjëf, Fatou Samba, Gambian Talents TV.
Okay, let's start with you, Mr. Jassy. Are you looking for fame or ministerial position, and you may not actually go to the polls December 4th?
Jërëjëf, dinaa tontu ci wolof ko defee mu méngoo ak tontu bi mu laajte. Number one, man ci sama wax gis-gis, man doomi Gambien la, yàgg naa liggéeyal nguur gi, def naa lépp lu ma mun pour taxawal sama réew ci jamono ju ne. Nekkoon naa fi président ndik suma réew, liggéey naa ci police bi, liggéey naa immigration, jàppale na am na ñu bari ñoo xam ne ñii nii su ma romba dinañ ma xàmmee. Soo ne kenn xamu leen waxal ne yow xamu lañu. Waaye man ci sama boppa suma tur egg na fu ma yeggul. Mr. Jeng a ngi foofu leen, Mr. Jeng jamono ji maa nekk Mile 2, Mr. Jeng moo ma daan jiite, moo daan ñëw ajuma ju ne ñu jiite ñu julli juma, ñun xamante nañ Mr. Kurang su ko kenn xamul den ku ñu war a xam la parce que wax yi mu fi wax su ko doomi Gambie xamul den ñu ngi xam ñoo xam ne waruñu leen a xam di xam ñoo xam ne ñi di ñàkk xam ñoo xam ne ñi ñoo jar a xam politique bi ni moo demee dafa necessary pour ñu understand ne nit ki su jógee ba taxaw pour taxawal réewam ci beginning bi alelam la cee def ak ñi ko jàppale ñu ngi jóg di jël seen time di jël seen alal di ko ci def pour ndik taxawal réew so decision bi ñu war a make it's up to them to make the decision but keeping in mind the interest of the nation yow sa gis-gis ak wala gis-gisi keneen mooy xëj na bokkaleen parti man bokkoon naa parti waaye ba ma bokkee ca parti ba gis naa ne ni ma suma ideas yi dégluwuñ ko Gambia yaaga naa taxawal parti benn parti musu la liggéey Gambia mu réglé li Mr. Kurang wax mais bi temps bi jot na pour ñu jël ñoo xam ne ñii nii bokkuñu ci parti pour ñu mun a am di independence pour pick ñi nga xam ne ñii ñoom la ñoo mun a taxawal ci ministerial position ak yeneen appointment because soo bokkee ci parti dañ la limite pour nga jël only ñi nekk ci parti bi pour doo leen place waaye soo demee as an independent candidate yow mun ngaa pick képp koo xam ne kii ni fiil nga ne o sa comité bi fiil nga ne kii mun naa participer man tey su ma nekkoon fi ministre su ma fi nekkoon président mun naa wax ba pare ne ci groupe bi ma nekkal nii I already have my Minister of Economic Affairs mun naa seet ci beneen parti am na ñeneen ñoo xam ne ñu fa they should come out they could be brought on board.
xaw ma ndax yaa ngi maa dégg Mr. Jassy bu dee yaa ngi maa dégg yaa ngi xaw a sàcc film bi léegi ndax yow di nga likkaloo beneen parti pour dem wala yeneen nit wala sax bu la parti wooyee tey dig la ne boo bokkee suñ faloo ñu def la ministre waaw wala déet.
su ma bëggoon a nekk ministre dinaa xaar ñu def ma ministre te maa ngi lay yëgal ne offre woon nañ ma ministre position jëluma ko parce que xam naa ne su ma ko jëloon liggéey ba ma nas fas yéene def du ma ko doon mun a def man ñëwuma pour ut liggéey dama ñëw pour def liggéey looloo tax ma bokk ci politique.
It's very clear. Thank you so much. Mr. Kurang, same question. Will you join any party? You can answer this in Mandinka if you want or in Wolof, same that she's asked the question. I think you prefer Wolof, right? Okay, Wolof. So go with Wolof, sir.
No, xam nga mbir mi xam nga lan la.
Wolof or Mandinka?
I will answer the question as it is asked.
Okay.
Right, dinaa answer ci Wolof. Mbir mi xam nga lan la. Nekkut na nit ñi xam nañ la na xamuñ la loolu amut solo luñ xam ci yow moo gën a important am na parti yi ñoo xam ne yaa ngi wax ne ñoom ñooy parti yu mag yi xam nañ leena si ñoom ba pare UDP ak NPP Fafisa ak Fakawakula benn parti bi moo xaaj mu nekk benn ok dundung ak dandang la waaw dundung ak dandang parti am na fee ñu xaaj ko lan moo ci utee yëpp benn moo tax ma ne luñ xam ci yow moo gën a am soxla ndax nit ñi xam nañ la du noonu am na parti yoo xam ne taxaw nañ fi ñu ngi wax ne parti bu mag lañ man gisuma ko maa ngi dox dëkk bi for almost 1 year 12 months maa ngi waxtaan ak nit ñi wat Gambians yi lu ñoo wax jarut ma déglu keneen mu wax ma ko maa ngi just jógee démb ba basee laa nekkoon time bi maa ngi woon Bakadaaji this time I know what xam naa lu nit ñi rek di wax ne luñ gis doyut leen soo luñ xam si ñoom moo gën a am soxla ndax nit ñi xam ne ñu fii yëpp ay popular men leen Kitabu xëj na moom a gën a popular fii Gambia yëpp Sénégal Guinée Bissau xam nañ ko soo xam naa ne du utaat beneen popularité right Mr. Jassy and so on man nekk naa fi ci télévision balaa 20 years ago right even 1991 so musuma uti ministère ci Yaya Jammeh musuma uti ministère ci Barrow suma students yi nekk nañ fi ministre musuma dem ci benn président nga ne ko jox ma place bu ma bàyyee jaane commission offer nañ ma pour ma jël place ma ne non man teacher laa loolu doy na ma waaye fu mu nekk nii nekkuma di uti parti bu ma ne wax naa ko ci bu ma commencé di wax ma ne parti su fekkoon ne ñoom doxaloon nañ loo xam ne right jaar na ak yoon bi ni kon ñun duñ jóg ñu taxaw waaye seen interest moom lañ jiitoo ci interest yi dëkk bi moo tax ñun ñu jóg so nekkut uti place moo tax ñu jóg te nit ñi xam nañ loolu Gambia fii fu mu nekk ni decide anguñ Barrow moo ko wax di nga mun a moom sa parti waaye moomuloo kenn.
waaw foog naa boobu seet na wax jooju seet na Kitabu benn tontu bi si soose wala si olof.
mën naa jaxase boor yi yëpp ñaari yëpp.
waaw jaxaseel.
because man
defal supa.
exactly loolu lu am solo la torop Fat Samba comme suma naataango yi ni ñu ko waxee rek ñun nekkul rek ne dañ jóg rek ngir nekk ak git loolu du wax gi because tey Gambia dafa soxla jëm kanam te jëm kanam googu noonu fooguñ ne parti yii nii ñu fi nekk ñooñu ko mën a jox because tey politique bi yëpp dafa jaxasoo nit ñi xeet lañ dee wax nit ñi luñ dee wax comme pour nga gis ci Gambia sax def dee jafe soo loolu moo tax ñun yëpp ñu jóg te man su fekkee yu fi daraja la comme Mr. Kuran nu mu ko waxee man recently I went to Guinea-Bissau comme jali baa kaa fo ñaamen tiltan tuuratan te tiltan nin saba tuuratan nin saba loolu lañ ma reyal nag so su fekkee popularity I think I'm more popular than even the big parties leaders is I'm popular than them because I'm known sub-region bi yëpp xam nañ ma so I believe the most important thing is nga bugga sa réew nga xam knowledge bi because education is totally different from knowledge. That's what we are facing right now. You have educated people who are not knowledgeable to advance this nation. So what we need is, we need to come together and show the big parties that this is the Gambia, and the Gambia we really need is in us, the people, not the parties. Thank you so much.
Mr. Jeng, foog naa si soose wala si olof ñu tontu.
dinaa dugg ci olof waaye du ma jël waxtu ne man bokk na ci suma philosophe façon laajte yu mel nii du ma dee nangu mu jël waxtu ci man. To me, I see it as a reactive question, and we are in a proactive platform. Wow! So mandal dina tënk suma tontu li ci kanam rawut bët and ki laajte question bi moom foofu la tollu waayam la te xëj na bugg a réewam moo tax mu laajte ko dinaa teg suma loxo fii ñu continuer pour dem ci àll kalaj gi jërëjëf.
balaa ñoo àll kalaj Ablaye Dia was the last question ñu soog a àll kalaj ndax. ok yeneen ñaar dañu war a laal si réforme si de te réforme si foog naa yaakamti nañ ko itam waaye nag buñ joxee waxtu foog naa lii def dee baax yéen itam ngeen am lii ngeen waxtaan ak askan bi foog naa am na solo kon ngeen ñu taxirlu ñun yëpp rek ñu yaatal mbir mi rek defe naa Koli.
Okay, I'm Mahmoud, and I have a question for everybody, actually. And I'll start with Kitabu. You've made mention that you're going to eradicate or stop youth from going to backway. And you've also mentioned that you're going to have discussions with these youths to know what their problems are. And after knowing their problems, or right now, we all know what the problems the youths are. I think you shouldn't tell us that you're going to have discussions, but we want to know how are you going to solve the issue of the youth in order to stop them from going to this dangerous journey of backway? Because, I mean, we already know why youths are going, but how are you going to stop that before you say that you're going to stop them from going?
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay. Akumata bakela, kumonyinkaro kumata bakele. I think I can go in Mandinka, right? Yes. Gambia, na nienda banko jibe 60% is youth. You can understand. Funding kelu dum fanam bi nyim banko kanjang inyinata wolle folola. Ning campaign be ke kan nka wuri wolle la funding kelal na sirangol yello ko be ke ka understand le mol be benakino be dum ko be ke la barna bota wala ikanyinan tolela. But B, there are lots of plans that you can set up for the youths. Pour munkama banko eta nyato. And those plans, I'm coming. And those plans, look at our sea. We have to take ownership of our sea. We have youths that are born in these coastal areas. They know the river and they know how to fish. If PDP is elected in the office, we'll make sure we take ownership of our sea and give it to the youths. We are not only going to push them into the sea, we're going to invest in them. We need to buy big canoes and fishing trawlers and give it to them to fish and sell the products in the Gambia. That will be an income for the youths and the country. You see, even our taxi drivers, we have lots of Gambians doing taxi in this country. But it's very, very simple. Go and order cars and bring them here. Give it to the youths. So guy they taxi, so guy anyway, 300 government, ñu mom ko 200 bi mu dem ci government bi. Lolu halis la. It's important. Push them into sports. Help them. Look at Gina Bass and Ibrahim Kamara. They did well with sports. Sport is what unites the country. But are we investing in sports? So ñun suñ ñëwé Speedy has a PDP government, will make sure we invest too much in sports. It's very, very important. Not even only sports, even agriculture. Youth can do, because my mom is an old woman. But in 2016, I went to Jara, and he was using only the hands. So I believe if we start buying machines, using technology, the youth will go into agriculture. And if they go into agriculture, in the near few years, will be food self-sufficient. So I believe all these mechanisms will help the youth to stay in the country and work harder for the country and earn something for themselves and earn something for the country. Yes.
Thank you. Is that answer good enough for you?
Yes.
We'll go to the next candidate.
Kurang, yours is going to be a pregnant question, actually.
I hope you can deliver.
You've worked with the Janneh Commission, and of recent, you've mentioned about some couple of hundreds of tractors of former President Jammeh being, parked at one place, and of course, we've seen farmers being given donkeys. If you were in power and those tractors were still lying down there, how would you distribute them to the farmers in order to revive back our agricultural system? And of course, you've talked about Social Security not doing, of course, what they're supposed to, providing housing for people, but just giving, 20 by 20, only few Gambians can afford. And the cost of rent is, of course, high. If you become president, how do you solve this problem to make sure the Social Security do what they're supposed to do in order to make housing easier for Gambians? Good.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good question. In an executive presidency, most systems are as good as the president. So if Mr. Jassy, for example, said, we have good laws in the Gambia. We inherited them from the British. One of the most efficient civil service you can find in the world is the British civil service. And they handed over to us a police system, a civil service system, perfectly. But are they working? They're not working. So your police service, for example, will not work if your president is not working, right? The Janneh Commission had a similar problem. The presidency, the executive power, was not interested in the commission. So the commission was just going on like a football match without a referee. You understand what I'm saying? So when the executive, it was the executive that was the stakeholder that gave the contract to the commissioners, who are not civil servants, but are there to execute a specific task. So you should be on their neck all the time to make sure that they deliver. The justice minister was the go-between between the commission and the civils and the executive. So in the case of the tractors that were at stake, that's a typical example of what is happening in the Gambia. Since 2016, this whole government has been handed over to lawyers to run all the commissions, receive money. They are not trained managers. I don't know whether Gambians know that. They are not trained managers. Most lawyers in this country tell you they are businessmen. They only employ one secretary. That is what was the problem of the Janneh Commission. We set up a system. We are trained managers. I was brought to the Janneh Commission simply because I'm a systems accountant. We set up a system to deliver and discharge these tractors under a transparent system. Because of political interest, that time, Baro abe UDP nyanyininkane yolon. So, because of that, anything that works for UDP works for Baro at that time. So I was fired. Some people even say I was APRC, even though I never shake hands with the sheikh and then I never met him. But then the thing was, political interest took over. The lawyers who took over the system when we left did not understand what was the procedure the business processes you have to put in place to discharge the tractors. So they kept talking and talking and talking and talking. And the tractors, the rain was coming. July, August, September, rain. Tractor le banko male foka pare. Lal nañ suuf be pare. Ñu ngi taxaw ci police station yi. Taw mu ngee ñëw. Tractor bi dafa yaaxu du amaat njëriñ. Loolu moo tax mu ne, ma ne, 3 months bu gaay jël to dispose. They didn't know what procedure and processes they have to do it. It was a business process. If you decide to dispose, you may argue or not whether disposal was a good idea by the commission. That's beside. But once a decision is made, a business process takes over. We were there as entrepreneurs and systems accountants. We set up a process with the police, the investigators, everybody. We put it together. They dismantled it. They came, they couldn't run it. It took them 3 months. The country lost almost $500 million. So that's what I said. I don't know what was the ending of your last point was what?
Because it was pregnant question.
The social security and housing.
Yeah. Because the cost of rent is just beyond.
Back to my statement. In an executive presidency, every institution is as good as the president. You saw in the Janneh Commission, more than $5 billion was taken away from the social security during the Jammeh government to do so many fancy projects. Duman makowa. So they make internet be mumfa. The testimony is there. The money was squandered. It was not the problem of the accountant in the social security. The orders were coming directly from the president's office to the board and to the managing director, right? Because there was an executive presidency. So the social security, you cannot blame them. The same thing now. The question is more for the president. Where is the housing? The pensioners' money is there. Social security, for your information, is richer than many banks in this country. Because pensioners have more money than banks. Banks have no money. They fight for the pensioners' money like life and death. So the social security has money, the pensioners' money. My argument is that why is it only Bakote that this country can boast about for 55 years? Why not Katong? Why not Gunjur? Why not Basse? Why not Farafenye? Where are the houses? The civil servants are still working for 50 years and they are still renting. The policemen. The money is there. The money is there. Halis be Mufa. But the systems and the powers that be need to have the interests of the people and the know-how to execute it.
Thank
yes.
You. Thank you. Mr. Jeng now or to Mr. Jassy?
Yes, I'll shift to Mr. Jassy, of course. Mr. Jassy, we all know this country has a loan that our grandkids would probably pick it up after we're gone. How do you, as president, manage the economy of the country so that we can do away from, of course, adding more loans to the ones we already have, or the ones, I mean, of course, coming?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. First of all, we have to recognize the fact that Gambia is a poor country. And as such, we cannot afford to be wasteful in the limited resources that we have. So that takes us back to the issue of fiscal discipline and management. We have to fight corruption because we're wasting a lot. We're wasting a lot of our resources. Once that is done, mend the holes that's wasting our resources, we now have to turn to the reality. And in every nation, the engine of growth, of economic growth, is the private sector. We need to start empowering our local content. We need to start supporting our local content. You see, when it comes to direct international investment, who enjoys some of these tax breaks, what they do is they come and take advantage of the tax breaks and they leave. We have to now put our focus on what is ours. And I would go as far as to say, in order to kind of like energize the youth, especially in entrepreneurship, I will consider bringing back the NTC concept. The NTC concept would give opportunity to the youth to become entrepreneurs. They'll be helped by government to engage, and they'll be given the tax incentives that are necessary to keep them alive. They'll be giving low interest rate loans so that they can survive. And also, it would help bring down the cost of food in the country. We must create an environment in which the Gambian, the locals, engage in business activity, profitable business activity, without having to pay all of their earnings to taxes. There must be tax breaks for these local small businesses. There has got to be a codified tax system so that it will have a threshold. If you do not reach the threshold, you will not pay a certain amount of tax. We must help the local content. We keep losing a lot of our resources because of, number one, corruption, and people who come in, take what they can, and then leave, and we are left holding the empty bags. When it comes to creating a better economic environment for the Gambia, I can say again, it's corruption. We must fight it. We must support entrepreneurship. We must look for other ways in which to generate more revenue, and stop creating these allowances that we give to top government officials, because the people who receive the largest amounts of the largest amounts of allowances are the very people who have the highest salaries. They're the ones who get to travel abroad and get per diem. The people that are at the bottom, who earn about $5,000 a month, never have a chance to travel. They don't receive per diems. They are constantly poor. So we need a complete overhaul of the system. Like everyone is talking about systems change, we need to look at things from scratch, and we need technocrats to do this. The best that Gambia has to offer, it cannot be foreign-led. It has to be a Gambian-led solution, by Gambians, for Gambians, and then this is something, once well documented, we can present to our developmental partners, so that we would begin to get on track. The fact of the matter is, Gambia is off track in just about every sector, and we need to get back on track. This is why I said I would go as far as to say that once we establish the youth, I would consider passing a law that would bar non-Gambians from engaging in retail trade. Foreigners can engage in wholesale trade and manufacturing, but retail trade, I am going to keep that sector for the local Gambians, so that they will not have to compete with, for instance, an Indian who's running a mini market. It is unfair to have an Indian come all the way from India with their resources to run a mini market that the Gambian was supposed to run in the first place. So I think what we need to do is to start looking at what's ours, protecting it, developing it, and keeping it for ourselves, whilst we also try to take advantage of the Gambians in the diaspora who are living in economies that are advanced and who can actually contribute towards the economic development of the country. Give them opportunities for investment. This can happen. For every foreign investor in the Gambia, I can assure you there is a Gambian who has equal access to equal capital and is willing to invest in the Gambia. The fact of the matter is, Gambians, when they come to Gambia to invest, they have no desire to pay for bribes that foreign investors may be willing to do. If you look at the State Department report, it says that there is a tendency of foreign investors to come into the Gambia, bribe foreign, government officials, so that they get the contracts that they look for. So this has to change. We have to look from within to start solving our problem instead of looking outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to put a stop to this now. We go into security reforms and then we come back. We have spent almost 2 hours now already. So maybe we'll borrow another 45 to an hour to conclude. And in that sense, like I said in the beginning, let's just open it up. I mean, you guys, this may be a great opportunity that we have several media houses together, and we discuss. People want to have answers, and we should provide them as much answers as they would be able to take from this debate today. Now, switching gears, going to the reforms. It has been a campaign rally in this country that reforms will be cardinal. We talked about 22 years of dictatorship. We talked about changing the winds, changing the operational modus operandi of this country, that we would now shift gears. I think that's why we established so many commissions, from the Jana Commission to the TRRC to the Constitutional Review Commission. I mean, the security reforms, law and order. We talked about so many reforms in this country. Where we are, 4 years, going to 5 in. This is what we're going to interrogate now. Each of you will have the same 5 minutes to talk about your strategy for reform. What sort of reforms are you looking for in your first 100 days in office, as far as these sort of reforms, law and other enforceable commissions, fighting other ailments in community, establishing and of course creating confidence in the security services of the country. One of the things that a lot of politicians are now questioning is, why do we still have ECOMIC in the country? Do we not support and or even agree that we have security men and women in this country who can look after the country, and we don't have to look for outside the country? So we'll begin with you this time, Mr. Fati. What sort of reforms in this aspect are you looking for? All sorts of reform except economic, now that we have talked about the economy.
Thank you so much. Security reforms is key to every country, because a secured nation is a safe nation for everyone. But looking at things in the Gambia, it's like our security is dormant. And it shouldn't be like that, because we have very able and good security personnel in the Gambia. So having other securities from other countries to be serving our president, to be in our barracks in the top places, it's something that we need to run away from. If PDP is elected into office, I don't think the ECOMIC will have 2 weeks in the Gambia, because we have the capability. Yes, we have the capability, and we need to give the confidence to our securities, because they have done it in places. They have done it in Liberia, in Darfur, in other places. So we just have to give them back the confidence and let them serve the country, because that's what the country needs. If you look at the burglaries in this country, it's too much, and we have the security. You look at the thieves and everything in this country, and we have the security. But why are they not, coming out? Because they are not considered. And it's very, very important for a president to know what is in your barracks and what is with your security. Because I personally, I usually go to the Yundum barracks. That's where I usually take my wife for antenatal and other things. But I believe they really, really, really need to be considered. Gambia is a youthful nation, and most of our youths are in the security service. We need reforms, but I believe it's all come back to the system. We need to change the system. We need to sit down and assess and see what is the problem. If we do that, and I believe we can achieve big in our reforms. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So what sort of reforms, apart from economic? Now you're not talking about numbers. We're not keying in numbers now.
Thank you. Well, we may still end up with numbers, knowing how many securities we need. But I think security sector reform is very critical. I always like to make reference to the Prime Minister of Singapore, the man who changed a country from a poor country into a developed country in 3 decades, in 1 generation. And he has this to say, right? How would you be secured if you only send the children of the poor people to the army? How would you be secured? You cannot be secured like that. Every citizen, every family in the country must have a stake in the security. That is why the Youth for Change, under a Change Party, national service, or in Brunei, in Rwanda. A national service does not necessarily mean giving guns to our young people. No, on the contrary, it means that putting security as a matter of concern for every family. Now look at it like this. Why do we say that you cannot only have poor people in the army? It's not safe. Think of an army man. You give me a gun, you give a man a gun, and he has no food to eat. He has no proper house to sleep. You ask him to go and defend the country at night, and there is a riot taking place. I'm taking this example from Lee Kuan Yew. You have a riot taking place. You ask this man to go and put down that riot, to stake his life, to stop the riot. The first thing that comes to mind is, what will I defend? Who am I defending? Am I just defending the president? Should I just go and stake my life to defend a president who spends millions of dollars on dawal? No. I go out as a citizen, as a security officer, to defend myself, my family, and the rest of the country. But how do I defend myself if I have no property? I have no house to defend. I'm a security officer. I have no good house. I don't even have a place to sleep. What am I defending? There must be a stake for our security in the service. So when we talk about security sector reform, we must think about it in this sense. We spent about $2 billion on a transition that gave us nothing. That money could have gone to implement a security sector reform. You cannot just implement a security sector reform by saying Babukar Sise retired, Lamin Fati promoted. No, it has to be a comprehensive policy of taking our young people, putting the future of our country in their hands, giving them the proper orientation, making sure that they have a stake in the country by investing in them in terms of education, in terms of giving them a stake to the national cake. The politicians have been chopping the money since 2016. The military, they put them in buses, they go to Yundum Camp and then Fajara Barracks. 4 o'clock, they put them back into buses again, they go to their families. No part-time job. How much is the salary? Did you ask? I'm a banker. I was working in the bank. Some of them are getting less than 3,000. How many people here? How many people here can survive on 3,000 without raba? A man with a gun is not supposed to do raba. He is supposed to survive on his salary. He is supposed to have a house. So security sector reform must start by making sure that the people in the security system have got a stake in the national cake. So reform starts with that. There are other types of reforms. We have a health sector reform. We have an agricultural sector reform. But obviously, all these reforms, we have discussed them along the way. I think the key issue, like you said, that is left is a security sector reform. Some of the generals need to go, but then they must go back to a house. They cannot go to an empty place. They cannot go back to where they don't have rent. Obviously, ngo walam security sector reform. Fali amira munam security sector reform ti. Amanki kaito ti de. Ikavo dole ne si, dole wuli. Ye army reform. Obuka ke kodo koma. Nim politician ole kodo bedo mo ya bedi mo like transitional reform, investigation upon investigation. What about the police? You cannot have a security sector reform without money. So we are suggesting that a national service be introduced to every family. To President founding in Singapore, the Prime Minister's son goes to the army, and then they are earning good money. In Singapore, an army officer can become the director of the civil aviation. In Singapore, the army officer can become the head of GAMTEL because the army is a university. We need to build an army and a police service and a security sector where the security, thousands and thousands of young men, you put them in camps. Look at 1994. Why do you think there was a coup d'etat in 1994? Most Gambians don't like to come to the point. Let me tell you one small story. My friend,
I think you should quickly come to the point.
I borrow 2 minutes. Yes. Right, my friend served in Liberia. They came from Liberia in 1991. They were demonstrating on Denton Bridge. You know what they did to them? They suspended them. They dismissed them. They jailed them. 89 members of the infantry battalion retired. Vacuum came. You know who took over? The people who never went to war. Think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Kura. Mr. Jang, 5 minutes, the sort of reform you'll want to see that is different from economic reform in your first 100 days.
Actually, I think in certain cases, we have to be very, logical, not emotional. When you look at security, it has different components. And all these components, they have a role to play in society. And there's a governing body, that is the ministry. So if you want to bring about a reform, I think you have to put each and every sector in perspective, to be able to bring that synergy, bring in the army, the police, the immigration department, and every security sector, on a round table, for them to look at the security issues of this country, with a broader perspective. I think from there, involving the experts, because you have to involve the right people. It is a process, and the process needs steps. And these steps, need some consistency to be able to get to where we want to get to. And when you look at Gambia, I think the security issues here is not that complex. It just needs, the involvement of the right people, who have the right knowledge, because knowledge is the antidote here. Looking at people like Mr. Jassy, whose expertise is security, and probably other people, who have their different expertise in different areas when it comes to our security issues. I think the way we look at things, I think it's a problem. My approach, towards reformation, is engagement. Once you engage, you will know exactly what the issues are. Otherwise, you will just duplicate your efforts, towards trying to solve a problem. It's going to be costly, it's going to take time, and at the end of the day, the country is at a level that, we need to be very proactive, in the way we approach things. So my 100 days of office, like I told you, I'll have a very, very serious technical audit, to see what's wrong and where, so that I'll be able to know who, identify and associate, and bring the right elements, that will give us, a proper security reform, a blueprint that will take us, to a level, whereby, if not all, we'll be able to tackle, the most pressing security issues. That's my point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeng. Mr. Jassy, first 100 days, what sort of reforms would you do, sir, besides economic?
All right. For all of the sectors, one has to understand what's in it and what needs to be done to change it. So, and you're going to have to use technocrats to do this. For each sector, I am going to get the right people with the right background to go in there and look at and make an assessment of the sector, and then make recommendations for change within the first 100 days. This is necessary because, for instance, if you took a guy like myself and asked me to do an assessment of the economic situation of the country, and asked Mr. Karjang to do the security assessment of the country,
I hope internet is not changing. Okay.
I will set up teams that would look at each sector and come up with an assessment and the way forward. And that, like I said, would be part of our strategic direction. When it comes to the area of security sector, all the work has been done. I was involved in it. I read all of the documents. I wrote some of them. I participated in writing some of them. And all we need right now is implementation. Security sector has stalled because of one reason. There is a general inability within the security services to link conceptual advice to the practicalities of implementation. That is, they would read what's on the paper, but they are unable to actually put it on the ground. And this is where we need to get started. So within my first 100 days, I know exactly where the documents are. I know exactly who was involved. I know exactly what to do. I will start security sector reforms immediately because all of the work has been done. Gambia, when it comes to the internal security, I will be looking at the police, number one. The police, what we need to understand is that the present policing system we have in the Gambia is not based on the British system. At no point in the history of the Gambia have we had a British style of policing. What we had, or continue to have to some extent, is a colonial policing system. A system that is a policing system that is designed to protect the crown or to protect the state house. There is no, this is what is known as regime security. What we have done in SSR is to create another part of security reform that addresses human security. That is the security of people like you and I in our homes, in our streets, feeling secure like the president would in his state house. And to do that, we came up with a double layer. And it's a two-pronged system. One is called the Gambia Police Command, National Police Command, and the Gambia Police Force Regional Command. The National Command deals and operates just like the gendarmerie, if you remember the gendarmerie. years back. They are a national police that have national jurisdiction, and they work at a certain level and have specific jurisdictions. And within these jurisdictions, they are the number one force that would respond. And then you have the regional sector. The regional police system has already been introduced, because right now we have police commissioners in every region. What needs to happen is to make sure that police commissioner reports only to a deputy inspector general of police and nobody else. This is to bring about a total decentralization of the police services. So when you have the regional police system, you will have the Banjul Police Command, KMC Police Command, North Bank Police Command, West Coast Police Command, NBR, URR, and so on and so forth. Each would have its own commissioner of police, and they will operate completely independent of each other, and their jurisdiction is only within their region. The national police would work like the gendarmerie to support all of the regional police departments and to have specific jurisdiction. It is important at this point that we create 2 new deputy inspector general of police, one for the regional command and one for the national command, to separate them. That way, the reporting pattern would be easy to understand and put in such a way that every single officer will report to only one superior at any given time. No 2, no 3, just one. You get your set of instructions and you report to just one supervisor. This is the system we created. And another thing that that is already done is that the idea of removing the security services from the civil service and call them and come up with an act called the Security Services Act, and also have the Civil Service Act. This is important because then you can begin to separate the two. For instance, if you, because of the nature of their job, you want to increase the salaries of the security service, you don't have to increase the salaries of every civil service. So every civil servant.
Sir, you can only do last 2 minutes. Do you want to take your last 2 minutes?
2 minutes?
No, we owe you 2 minutes. You want to take that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. And this is what we will do basically in the internal security. And when it comes to the military, I would say that we maintain a military and have 3 battalions. 3 battalions of 1,000 each. Now, what we do with these 3,000 men and women is not leave them in the country to run around aimlessly, but to actually create an Army Corps of engineers within them and an Army Corps of health technicians. The Army Corps of engineers would be responsible for building roads that are not the primary roads. These are the feeder roads, schools, health centers, as well as other public services that the communities need. One of the units within the Army Corps of Engineers would be water treatment specialists, a team that will be responsible for ensuring that every single community in our country has access to clean running water. Only the Army is the asset, the national asset that we can use to do this. So it's about time we train them, equip them, and send them out to do this. Because as I have traveled the country, what I realize is that water is a tremendous shortage. In the abundance of water, we are thirsty. That is unacceptable. And we have the military that could be reorganized, reoriented to do that. When it comes to the healthcare sector, the military could be trained to become the primary healthcare givers in the country. They will operate by using mobile healthcare units that would go into the villages to actually, on a regular basis, to bring healthcare services to people who would otherwise not have it. This we have done in many countries. It's being done. We need to start utilizing our military asset to serve our people. The Navy, I will not call it a Navy, I will transform it into a Coast Guard with specific jurisdiction. They will have a specific responsibility, which would be to, they will be responsible for port and coast security, drug interdiction at sea, aids to navigation, search and rescue, and marine safety, and a host of other things. The time is short, but I could have gone on for the week. But I will stop right here and hope and have an opportunity to finish up later.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we're going to do the questions and answers pretty quickly. It's already past 8 o'clock, and we intend to be out of here before 9, inshallah. Now, Mr. Kurang, let's start with you. OIC has stalled for a long time. In your first 100 days, what will you do about OIC? We are promised roads, we are promised hotels, we are promised economic prosperity. We were told actually that the OIC funds were already here more than a year ago, but the roads are still to be done. If we call you Your Excellency Alaji Mamadi Kurang of #1 Marina Parade, what will you do about OIC?
Thank you. I think the OIC is a typical problem of the Barrow government. You know, a lot of hype, a lot of promise. We heard about billions coming. We haven't seen anything. We heard about job creation, no jobs created yet. We heard about expensive highways costing $1 million every kilometer. We are yet to see. So far, we still have potholes. I think what I would do, you know, in the first 100 days for the OIC, obviously, if you want to change something, you have to analyze it. And to analyze, you have to investigate. We need to know what actually happened. Because we know there was a head of OIC that has been taken away. We know that people are being paid very high salaries, but for the Gambian, still now, nothing has happened. The OIC is not just about a conference. These international conferences are opportunities for economic growth. Because together with the investment that comes in building roads and so on, job creation comes in, and then development also comes in. So what I would do, I would still believe that we can hold a conference. I think that a country that takes in maybe 100, 200,000 tourists should have no problem taking in, 50 or so heads of states and bringing them in. I think the government promotes, and people within the government put a lot of hype on this project so that money chopping can happen, right? As an accountant, I would do an investigation. I would not call a commission, because commissions, we know, chop money is what commissions do, and then nothing comes out of them. I think you can hold a simple financial investigation, not within 100 days, but within 2 weeks. You'll be able to tell people what happened to the money. Every accountant knows that. And then from there on, we will take it right from there. We would like to go with the project still.
Mr. Jeng, in your first 100 days, what will you do regarding the draft constitution that failed? The constitution that so much money was spent on, so much consultation was done with Gambians at home, in the diaspora, institutions, heads of departments, villages, alcalos, everybody has participated in that process. Yet, the new constitution never came into force. What will you do if you become president regarding that?
I would pick up the issues that brought about the setback, because I think if I can totally recall, it was some few clause in the constitution that certain people reacted to, regarding the Muslim world and the Christian world, which constitute, a majority of the population. I think the Muslims were against secularism, and the Christians were afraid of Sharia, which I think if the commission engaged the scholars in both religions, I think they would have come to terms. So, what I will do is I will engage, the population back, because the country needs a book, to rely on, and the country without a constitution, I think it's dangerous. So my first 100 days, I will use a restorative approach, whereby I will involve, the people who are, reacting to this clause in the constitution, so that we can have a common ground, that we all know that it's a book, that answers to each and every one of us our needs, because it's something that we all contributed towards being put together, and there's a lot of money that has been invested in it. So I think it's something that if we, are matured enough, you'll be able to have a proper book.
Do I hear you say you will implement it as it is if you are president?
Actually,
or you'll encourage its implementation?
I will engage, the issues that are, hindering it from being implemented, and
I don't think the issue of secularism is in fact the issue.
Actually,
it was a talking point, but I don't think it's
actually it's one of the issues, because I personally, met a group of people, who form a group, ready, to go against, the constitution
in Parliament,
because they think, they think that the constitution, will come to, promote homosexuality, and because at the end of the day, it's a conflict in it. So, yeah.
I think the reason the draft constitution failed is the term limit, for example.
That's one of the issues.
And I think those are the main issues why it failed.
Actually, they are quite
the retroactivity also of term, the term limits. So there are key things that I feel if they were doctored, it would have passed.
Actually, regarding the term limits, this has something to do with the politicians, but religion also have a major role to play, because at the end of the day, when the constitution gets into parliament, before it's passed on, it has to be blessed by the Gambian people, because it's something for the Gambians, not just for the parliamentarians. So it's chaotic. I think everybody have to accept, if the constitution has to be adopted, it has to be on everyone's will who is a Gambian. We all willingly have to go to the constitution, knowing that it's going to be favorable to everyone. So we need to sit back on the drawing board to re-engage and involve the right people, so that we can get to terms, both politicians and the religious aspect. So,
Mr. Fati, we come to you now. As it stands today, NPP and APRC have formed an alliance. Some people have been upset about it. Some people are excited about it. Some people, in fact, feel it's the right thing to do. We need to reconcile ourselves and become one Gambia, one people, one nation, and to the Gambia ever through. But what do you think about this as a presidential aspirant? Would you have done this or not, and why?
Mr. Drame, that's a good question. I've seen it on social media, it's all over. People are complaining about it. But to my own perspective, I believe the right reparation should have happened. At least reconciliation is something that it needs to be out there. But the problem we had is even with the TRRC. The rightful sensitization, civic education was not done to bring people closer to each other. They were going on with the TRRC and everything, but the right civic education was not done. And NPP and APRC coming together, if you look at it, people will be a little bit offended because, families have suffered and lots of things have happened in this country. But if you look at it deeply too, it was not the APRC as a party, it was the government, the then government who did all those atrocities. But what I believe is one thing we should do as a country is let's come together as one people. Let's forget about what happened before. It's going to be very, very hard, but that's the rightful thing to do. If we want to develop as a nation, we need to come together. Rwanda have done it, other countries have done it, and I believe we the Gambians can do it too. If we keep on having these grudges among ourselves, hatred among ourselves, it's just going to increase many times. It's not going to help the country. So if we want to work as one people, we need to come together, forget about all those things that have happened. But at least the right reconciliation should have happened, at least by the help of artists and other people.
So you agree NPP and APRC should be together for one Gambia for unity, right? Yes, no?
No, the whole country should come together. Not only APRC and NPP coming together.
So you see nothing wrong with their coming together?
Yeah, it's, in terms of politics, people might think that it's bad and things like that, but
no, what do you think?
What I think is it's necessary for all the country for all the parties to come together is very, very important. It's going to be very, very hard. But for people to come, it's not only about party. It's about our people. We haven't things in heart that is disturbing us. We need to come together and throw that away and look at the interests of the country and develop the nation. That is the most important thing.
Thank you, Mr. Fati. Mr. Jassy, we're coming to you, and as a security expert, I'm going to be blunt and straightforward with this. Our men in uniform are unhappy. The Commander-in-Chief of the Gambia Armed Forces have never stepped a foot in a military installation in this country in more than 4 years. They are not happy. If you become Commander-in-Chief, how do you make the men in uniform happy?
First of all, I would like to address the failure of the current president to visit military and security installations in the country. It clearly shows that he is clueless about his role as president of the Republic of the Gambia. As the Constitution says, his role is to protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Gambia. And if he doesn't take the time to go and see the men and women who are engaged in this task, then he clearly doesn't have any interest in his job. Number two, once you reform the security services, you would realize that Gambia has what is needed in order to protect and secure ourselves. We are part of a connection of security within the sub-region. And it is important that we have strong security in the Gambia, because a chain will break at its weakest point. Gambia should not be allowed to have weak security. It is not to Senegal's interest, it is not to the sub-region's interest. And if Mr. Barrow is behaving in a manner that is making our security services unhappy, we become less secured, the sub-region becomes less secured. This is what we must understand. And I have worked with these men and women, I have interacted with them at different levels, and I know the capability is there. For instance, when I was given the job to formulate internal policies for the Immigration Department and Gambia Police Force, I came to the realization that when I came in 1999 to join the Gambia Police Force, I was the only one with a bachelor's degree in the entire force. When I met this group of men and women from the Gambia Police Force and the Gambia Immigration Department, each and every one of them has a bachelor's degree. This was tremendous, tremendous development. And when I interacted with them, when I worked with them, I realized the tremendous potential that they have, that the nation must take advantage of. Give them the right tools to work with, give them the right environment to work with, and they will have the job done. At this point in time, we should not have had any member of ECOMIG being in the Gambia. You see, one thing that gave me insider's information is that in 2016, when Mr. Jammeh refused to leave, ECOWAS was tasked, as we all know, with the responsibility of negotiating with him or coming up with a strategy to make him leave. That task was placed at the hands of President Mahama of Ghana. Mahama of Ghana turned to a security firm here in the United States for direction. That firm called me and put me part of the team to create the strategy of which to remove President Jammeh. During those discussions, I came to the realization that all of those people that were there were very, very concerned that if we allow ECOMIG to come in with too many of Senegalese soldiers, Gambia would see it as some kind of an occupation, and it would also, whether we accept it or not, create a backdoor entry for Senegal into our sovereignty. As it stands today, this ECOMIG is looking more and more like a Senegalese invasion, marginalizing, sorry, not a Senegalese invasion, but a Senegalese occupation. When President Barrow came to Gambia on a Senegalese military plane, they may not have understood what that meant. That meant Senegal was going to install our president. I would have preferred Mr. Barrow to come back to Gambia on a Gambian bicycle than fly in a Senegalese military airplane. We are a sovereign nation. We are not anti-Senegalese, but we are a sovereign nation with the duty to protect our turf, the God-given territory that we have that is called Gambia. Protecting Gambia and loving Gambia is not hating anybody, but we have to have a mutual respect for each other's sovereignty and behave in a manner that would not make any party, whether in Senegal or in Gambia, uncomfortable about the presence of other security forces on our soil.
Thank you, sir.
Now it takes me, but when I look at what is happening, I realize what the concern of so many of the security people that were on the team that I work with to come up with that strategy. Part of what I was asked to do was to look for ways in which they would exhaust all other means before military action. I suggested to them that they should include the King of Morocco and the President of Guinea-Conakry, because I had Mr. Jammeh refer to these two as his in-laws, and I thought that they would be very persuasive if they were included in the negotiations to ask Mr. Jammeh to leave. And it all turned out well until Mr. Barrow left the Gambia. That was when we began to lose part of our sovereignty, and it will continue to do so until we get Mr. Barrow out. Unfortunately, our men and women in uniform will remain unhappy until there's a change in government.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Guys, I tend to give him a little bit more time because he's not present with us physically as well. And of course, when he talks in this area of expertise, it makes sense that we could all pick up on some of the vibes he's sending. Ablai, we want to finish with our journalists. Let's give you another 15 minutes for questions, and then we'll try to wrap up now and leave. Quick, and no pregnant questions. One question, and directed specifically to a person. Please. Is it really?
Yes.
Is that your name?
Yes.
But her mic, Adama.
My question is drawn from the first session, and it's directed to Mr. Kurang. You have talked about debt and debt management in your previous deliberation. So the country is said to owe 77.4 billion. I stand to be corrected. With your knowledge of debt management, how do you intend to tackle that if you are elected come 4th December?
Thank you.
Yeah, the interesting thing about sovereign debt is sometimes even governments can underdeclare, because we know about off-balance sheet as accountants. There are some debts that may not appear in the books. So what is being said around now is what is in the books. How to deal with the debt situation? Well, I did make mention of that. Our president goes around the country and said, I have built more roads and more bridges than Jawara and Yaya. But he never said, I have borrowed more money, or I am borrowing more money than each of them, even though they have stayed for 30 years and 20 years. So there are two sides of a coin. He is spending and spending and spending. Obviously, we know the previous government was also spending. The APRC government under Yaya was also spending. How do you tackle it? You have to contain spending. We have what we call discretionary and non-discretionary. There are certain expenditures you must do. You have to buy medicine for the doctors, right, for the hospitals, and you have to pay the doctors and the nurses and the teachers. They have to be done. But we know that there are so many expenses within the budget. People always make fun about the president's personal budget, for example. How do I solve? I would not be spending that amount of money that the president is spending on fish money. That's one. But that's just an example. This country spends so much on traveling, for example, also. There is business class that has been going on since 2017. You will see a ticket for a minister costing you $100,000. I think that is not necessary. Those are the examples. I'm just giving you examples, but there are so many examples. I gave traveling within the country here of how much fuel they use. New cars every day, nothing is being driven. We thought Yaya Jammeh left about 1,000 vehicles. It seems that Barrow is still buying vehicles. What for? So we know there is discretionary expenditure. That is what we call the expenditure side. We need to boost up the income, which is the other side, in order to reduce the debt. Apart from reducing expenditure, you need to look for alternatives. The efficiency. The Gambia is a tax economy. So most of our income comes from taxes. All right? Well, without adding anything, I also say I'm the only tax expert among all the contestants for these presidential candidates. So what am I going to do? I understand the tax system. You can reduce taxes if you efficiently collect them. They said the Gambia collects maybe about what, $1 billion or 12 billion or something, $1 billion or so every month in terms of taxes. Well, it's not a lot of money. You can still increase the amount of tax you collect if you increase the efficiency of your information. The Gambia government cannot even tell you how many people are eligible to pay taxes, how many citizens are there, how many non-citizens are there. So we tell you in accounting, if you don't have your information, they say it's more powerful than the money. If you don't get your information right, as an accountant and economics, I survive on information. If you get the information within the government correct, if you are able to register each and every citizen, 1 million people, 2 million, 3 million people is no big deal. China has 1.2 billion people, and they know every citizen, not only your name and your surname and where you live, they also know what you do every day. That may be too much, isn't it? But 1 billion people, 2 million, 3 million people, we should get our statistics correct. There is no accounting you can do properly if you don't get your statistics. So I am going to increase the efficiency of the information that the government receives and processes and use to run the country. When we increase the efficiency of the information, we will be able to increase. You saw the Janet Commission. If you saw the Janet Commission, you saw there is so many incomes, so many revenue that the government lost in so many opportunities. They talk about the parastatals here. They are being badly run, my friend. The GPA, the GAMTEL, they are big money losers because they are backed by the taxpayer. If they are losing money, the taxpayer is losing money. The income is going down. If you increase the efficiency of this institution, in the Jawara government, they try to come up with what they call performance contracts, where the parastatals will report to the government based on performance indicators. That was just a starting step.
Thank you, sir.
However, in this new government, right, if we are elected into power in December, we will increase information efficiency, increase taxes, and reduce expenditure and balance the budget.
Thank you, thank you. Next journalist, next question.
Now, before I give, let me ask my question.
To who?
I will still go back to Kura. So much is being said about economic reform, direct forest investors to boost our economic. But we forget about what we Wolof will say, Bena dom sikir from pudrongo ni wajuram. That's the NAWEC. Our energy sector is not being mentioned in terms of boosting our economy. And I expect direct foreign investors cannot invest in a country which is not fully reliable in terms of energy. Mr. Kurang, if you voted in your office come December 5th, what are your plans within your first 100 days in terms of, boosting in our energy sector?
Right. I think the problem of NAWEC is very obvious. Investigations have been conducted. NAWEC is owing millions and millions and millions of dollars. There was something that was reported in the Janet Commission that NAWEC almost brought down the Gambia's banking system. About $300 million, the NAWEC could not pay. The banks were almost going bust. The central bank had to come in to guarantee NAWEC. Well, who is central bank? It's you. Your tax money was used to bail out NAWEC. So NAWEC is such a danger, not only in terms of electricity, but in terms of the financial viability of this country. The only solution with NAWEC is to reform it, and to encourage alternative sources of energy. So many Gambians are already using solar energy. A small country like this, wind power, solar energy, there is too much sunlight in this country. Alternative sources of energy would make the people independent of NAWEC, will streamline the demand that NAWEC is facing. Right now, there is a ship in the river Gambia that called Car Power that is basically the lifeline for NAWEC. So we are exporting energy from another country at this moment, whether you like it or not. That's the fact. So unless you try to reform the country where you have alternative energy, there are 3 things or 4 things that go together in this country that must be simultaneously solved. The electricity, the road and the communication network, and the water system. Every village in this country must be supplied with electricity and water, and must be supplied with an efficient energy and water system. You cannot solve the problem of NAWEC by tinkling and dismissing managing directors. It is never a problem. Gambians like to blame the managing director. I'm telling you, the problem in NAWEC is bigger than any managing director, bigger than any board. It's a sovereign problem. It is for the government to take the bull by the horn, to realize that the debt, do you know that the debt, according to the Jammeh Commission, that was incurred?
Are you advocating for NAWEC to be privatized?
Well,
what do you think about that?
It has happened in so many countries, but if you are going to privatize it, you must be careful, because privatization has taken place here before, and it only ended up making somebody rich. And in the end, when they realized that he was stealing money in Jawara's time, they tried to detain him, and then he hired a helicopter and left. Do you know that story? It happened here. So I am telling you that you can privatize, but people say in many countries, if you want to privatize NAWEC, you have to break it down. Distribution and power generation are two different things. And then there are other aspects of NAWEC that you can. So yes, it can be privatized, but you must know which aspect to privatize, and you must be very careful with it.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Another question?
One question to Mr. Jassy, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Jassy, when we talk about development, we also talk about infrastructure. What plan are you trying to put in terms of infrastructure development, considering the physically challenged men and women in the country?
All right. Once again, if the only tool you can use is a hammer, you tend to see everything as a nail. We have a military asset that is sitting there, starting from with Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, coming to the United States, in Europe. All of these nations utilize their military assets by creating an Army Corps of Engineers. This Army Corps of Engineers are responsible for building the secondary roads, some of the bridges within the rural areas, the health centers, and a host of other infrastructural development that they can do locally without interfering with the private sector. I must make that clear before Mr. Kurang, the economist, jump on this case. I will preserve the private sector, but I will utilize the military asset, train them to become electrical engineers, to become construction equipment operators, to become engineers' aides, to become construction carpenters, and a host of other training that they can do. And whilst they are serving, they will be doing this, they will be contributing towards infrastructural development within the country. And when they are done serving, they can use those skills to actually start a business. And part of my plan is, once you have served in the military, acquired a certain type of skill, when you are honorably discharged and you form a company, the Gambia government will guarantee all former service personnel who are engaged in these skills to have a certain percentage of government contracts. That way, it will encourage more and more people to go into these fields and become skillful. When you look at a country like the United States and all these beautiful buildings, they are not built by people who've been to the university. Maybe the only person that went to the university was the person who drew the plan. The people who execute the plan are highly skilled people who actually, in 95% of the case, served in the US military. They come out as skilled workers, continue to contribute towards national development. This is what we must do, use the military whilst they are in active service and still continue to use them once they retire from the military. Infrastructural development would be two-phase. One, the secondary part would be under the military, under the part that deals with structural development, infrastructural development, the Army Corps of Engineers. The other part would be the private sector that, of course, continues to employ a lot of people, and we don't want to interrupt that as well. But they will be working together to serve the Gambian people. This is the best way to move forward, because we must understand that we don't have the money to pay contractors to do all of this. For instance, all of the feeder roads in the country could have been given to the military. How do we do this? Once we train the military, we bring back what is known as the Public Works Department. Each region will have its own regional public works department that will be made up of civilians that work under the governor's office, but they will also have a military attachment that would also be engineers that would work for developing infrastructure within the region. Once every region has the development that it needs, the nation develops as a whole. This will definitely bring economic growth. It will make life a lot easier in every aspect for every Gambian. I will say it again, let us begin to utilize our military asset instead of just letting them sit there and not being active in any way, shape, or form. Once we come up with these ideas of creating this Army Corps of Engineers, you'll be surprised how many of our development partners will be willing to come forward to help us set it up and actually give us the equipment that we need as a start. And also we have so many people within the private sector, such as staff construction and Jigo construction and all these other construction companies that actually have people who have the skills that could partner with the military and start training them in the use of this equipment and some of these construction techniques, so that they will become more and more productive. The nation will benefit, they'll benefit, and we will be on our road to development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we now do just 2 questions, and then we'll end this, please? Abdullah, you decide about 2 questions.
Yes. So I have 2 questions for Mr. Kura, and 1 question for Kitab and Jeng.
Sir, prioritize. Let's use 1 to 1, please.
Okay,
it's almost 9 o'clock. We have to leave.
Let me direct my questions to Mr. Kura. You talk about creating 500,000 jobs, right? And I want to ask, how are you going to create these jobs? And what are the key and major potential job creation means and areas in the Gambia that you're going to tap in?
Thank you. Did you say you were going to create 500,000 jobs?
No, I didn't say that. I did say that we are going to mobilize 500,000 young people. All right? And the purpose of that was not, right, initially as a job creation means. To create jobs in that sense, to see it as job creation, is just to say, to put them out there and give them salary. No. First of all, what is the problem of the country? We feel that the country has to be built. So what change is saying, if you want to build a country, you need a core, a skill core, meaning a group of people, young people in the country who have the skills. Now, there is a symbiotic relationship that is working here, right? We want to build our roads. Look, you have to look at what is happening right now. Who is building the roads? They are foreign companies. You want to build the bridges. Which bridge is being built by a Gambian company? They don't have the skills. You have to bring people from outside to build the skills, to build the bridges. The Singapore army, for example, right, is able to mobilize young people that can build a bridge over the Singapore River in 24 days. So they have so many bridges on the Singapore River, built by who? Singaporeans. So to have the money, what our people have been saying to us since 1965 to 1994 to 2016, ndata bantale nga kodonati, dem nañ bitim rew, indi nañ xaliss bu bari. People were out there celebrating $1 billion coming. But that is not the theory for development that has developed any country in this world. Tell me one country in this world that has developed just like that, with foreign money without domestic skills. So we are saying is that development has to be internally generated. Get your people prepared. Now, when you get them prepared, the jobs will create themselves, because what I am saying is, I talk about relevance education. If you mobilize 500,000 young people, you are not going to ask them to become political science, sociology, or economics. No, hand skills, my brother. Hand skills. Hand skills. We need engineers. How many people are graduating from University of the Gambia with civil engineering degree, or electronics engineering, or medicine? How many? Few, if any. So there is something that is lacking. Taiwanese and the Singaporeans build their country with technical skills, so we need technical education. Only the government can mobilize that. All the private institutions, including my own institution, could only limit ourselves to those skills that do not require so much investment. Technical skills require investment. So there is a process that is taking place. Where will they work? Now, my key job point, if I am to answer your question, is housing, housing, housing.
Thank you. Housing.
Yes,
housing.
Because 100,000 houses we mentioned, sir. 100,000 houses, those boys and girls that are going to build those houses will buy those houses. The wealth will be, it's a cycle that you create wealth with. They build a house, you pay them for the labor. They buy the house, they bring their parents to stay there. They live in the house. That is how you build every country.
Thank you.
We don't need a new formula.
Thank you. The formula is there. Last question. Who's doing the last question?
Last question.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Jassy.
Mr. Jassy, are you with us? Yes.
Okay, yes, quickly. Over the years, we've seen many young Gambian ladies have been trafficked to the Middle East and sold as domestic slaves. And according to the U.S. Department of State 2021 Trafficking in Persons report, Gambia is ranked tier number 2 meaning we've not been doing enough to eliminate this. I mean, trafficking in person. What and how can you address this problem in your first 100 days?
All right, thank you very much. To do that, we have to strengthen the immigration department. And to strengthen them, we have to take away some of their responsibilities and further focus them on enforcement. Enforcement is what is lacking. And again, we'll have to come back to the issue of corruption. There are times when officials who are paid to protect these people actually receive bribes and look the other way, and these things happen. I have been within the international community in the Gambia, and one of the greatest concerns for most of the embassies from especially the Western countries is that the Gambian government is not serious about prosecuting people engaged in human trafficking. And this is the greatest disappointment that they have of the borough government, which is also part of the failed security sector reforms. My reform package on that is this. I will create a new department on the interior called the Passport and Civil Registration Directorate. I will remove passport issuance, aliens cards, and all these other documents away from the immigration department and give it to a new department that would be the issuing agency. The immigration department will only be the enforcement agency. That way, we are freeing up a lot of extra officers in order to engage in enforcement. But before you send them out, you have to make sure they understand, they're given the training, and in giving them the training, you need to make them understand the effect that has on humanity when you sit back and allow human trafficking to continue. Once they grasp that understanding, they begin to use their powers that are given to them to do their job, to do it better. Again, we will come to the point, there is a failure in enforcement. We have all the laws, we have everything that we need in place in order to do this, but we must say that it is unfortunate that the borough government do not seem to have the political will to do anything remotely related to reforming our security. And as a result, we continue to suffer. Our women are being sold into slavery now. The children are dying in the seas. The young women are being raped and murdered. Homes are being broken into. Traffic is a mess. Nobody can go anywhere on time. There is a host of things that are tied to security sector reforms. And that is why I keep saying we need to go back and do that. You need a president who understands the importance of security sector reforms. And I am that candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jassy, and thank you, media persons here. Mr. Kitabu will give you 3 minutes for closing statements. You may speak in Mandinka, Manjago, Jola, Sarahule, any language you so choose to speak, but the closing statement must be limited to 3 minutes, and it must be all-encompassing, and you say your final goodbye.
I wouldn't do justice if I don't address one sector, that is my own sector, because I'm from the arts and culture sector, because if you look at things, that sector is, the creative industry is booming right now, but actually our ministry totally forget about us, and it's something that we will address if we are elected into office, because today we have lots of creative artists in the Gambia, and that is gonna help the youth to acquire jobs, because today you have arts generally, you have artists, you have actors, you have actresses, you have comedians. The industry is big, but it's even very, very hard to monetize your own YouTube platform in the Gambia here. All those things need to be addressed. You look at it, even the tourism and culture now, culture is even abandoned. So that is something that it's a problem, and Gambia need to sell its culture outside. So we believe if PDP is elected into office, we look into that area too. It's very, very important. And my last words are, mbe mobe tentula menu bejang mbafula la baraka bake kafuta jankasi kalamoy akumata bakel nyinem politiko manke kaja firoti amanke nendirti amanke kabula nyola politiko mu nyinati yemen soto moli yew foye wala kumata ka nyonen kabula nyola, because bi nyimbanko mu mbele tati mo kilin tanteng ndu nata da nyato ndolle tata nyato na murta ko ma faran tollemu oto katara tele to katara Facebook oto ka bula nyola at the end albe bulo di la nyola ka fo nyoy ko ha politiko le mu bari mbi mu Gambia din kelenati watara aliye molu mo jamabe banta aliye men ku yandi wo mu kulati mi alon ko is a problem di ko jeexale si olof rek di tentu ñëpp di yo salaamu kawlan ko di tentu ñëpp abe keling di jërëm ñëpp di wax ñëpp ne daal mbég nañ trop pour taxaw fii wax lañ luñ leen amal as candidates. I thank you all. Allah baraka bag. And I'm a comedian already, so I still do comedy. So Allah baraka bag.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kurang. 3 minutes. An area that has eluded us during this debate is healthcare. So you may touch on that if you have any plans for the health sector. Why are women dying when giving life? Why is it that when you have minor ailments, you don't get treatment? That's an area that is of concern. So maybe the remainder of you should also touch on those areas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame. Memobe Tentula, Memobe Jaila, Mange Gerim Nyip. Right, for all the listeners, I'm very pleased. If I said anything, offend anybody, right, I'm very sorry about it. Gambia is facing election which is critical. 2021 December is very critical for all of us. Molko mo mbelo la Seattle. Bar mol Seattle nyawa mol te keno la kilinti. Tuwabol ka ke nyama easy tale. Politician sinano janna aya foko ala faynye. Mbe airport lolay. Ala faynye. Mballa silol be dadala. Ala faynye mbe nyimbegal. Ndefe o man important. Ci man lu gëna am soxla moy waaji lan la defon bala mo laajte rew mi. That is what is important. Secondly, as we are facing it, this is not an election about the past. Amanke kate fayo me alonko nyanda mo le compensate lala because of something else. It's about banko bitamintole for the next 10 years. Nyanda banko di la jumalle la me alonko ninge ila jar jarol jibe ayita ni molla la ko isi banko sambanole for the next 10 years kuma jamal le fota kabrin 2016 bare mol mantara carte fay kam patio e ngo ngajele president kala patio bayle fo manki jang president kala patio sindila red card diala fo manki jang oto fo carte o fay patio le bam fo ya fay president ne ye carte fay president ne 2021 is a very critical decision. Mol ka foko alga badi mfasak. O man ke musulme atide. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam abota Quraysh le. Atata Madina. Amurta nan Quraysh. Abadi me yalon ko mantara tonya ta mandi kan aye kanate. Sa intebe men fola banko mo len kawle fo na friends ole. Ni ta koy kam mole noma katun kon te musiolti te lafti te wo damane atine yen noma su feke ne yang ma topan dik ño boka het gatcha rek mo la ci feka parce que yaange topa yoon bo xamne rasul daf andut ak rasul gis nañ ko fi not only in the Gambia gis nañ ko fu neka so it is very important bahna important na pour nit yi ñu xol candidate bu neka lan moy jaar jaaram man ma ngi laajte rew mi because feel na ne what is been happening since 2016 membe ke kan kabin 2016 makati bayo wala be kering politiko tambitale ko nga experience otole neneni mansa kunda man do ko ke isa foko mbulo nota je comme accountant olete andu nga kisi rokel nyim banko kodole mu problem oti andu president e nyanta kala je me yalon ko atenene nola oto gambian kol aga nañ fo xamne place bo xamne ñepp war nañu xol ori baro muntuma le suokuta mol ma ñoo suté mol ye ñoo suté le sainde mol men ka kuma fula fo anin kuma killing wo manke kilinti I feel I'm consistent luma waxon demba mom la ne di wax tay mom la ne di wax eleg
time sir
assalamu alaykum
thank you so much Mr. Jeng
li ma def rek mooy ma commencé la gërëm yow Haruna ak sa team bi pour plateforme bi nga create nii pour jox Gambian si pour ñu ubbi seen bët ba pare ubbi seen noppa ñu taataan ba pare déglu pour xool ñi nga xamante ni ñoom ñoo laaj réew mi naka lañ leen a gàddoo fan lañ leen a yóbbu buñ leen fa àggee naka lañ leen fa bàyyee te defe naa plateforme bi ñun ñëpp nangu nañ ne plateforme yi xam-xam la ak plateforme la boo xamante ni képp ku toog fii tey di ñun panélistes yi yëpp defe naa buñ ci jàngeewut kon am na lu des ci ñun ne koo xam ne réew daf la ñor bu dee déglu nga li fi roj ci xam-xam defe naa bu dee amoon nga sikki sàkk ci jubluwaay bu dëkk bi di jublu defe naa fu mu nekk nii xel dina commencer dal ne boo xoolee ñi fi toog ñëpp ay ndaw lañ ba pare tamit kilifa bokk suñ biir ne soo xoolee dëkk ay ndaw ak ay kilifa buñ nekkee benn ñoom ñoo dee mën a yóbbu réew waaw nekk njiitum réew nag doon na mbir moo xamante ni mbir mu jafe la léegi ñu ngi sàkku ñaan ci ñi nga xamante ni ñoom ñooy audience yi kilifa diine yi kilifa aada yi ne réew mi toll na ci level boo xamante ni soxla na ñaan naka noonu itam ñu demonstrate responsibility ne élection du xëccoo waaw ne lépp lu ñëw xëccoo fii yàlla daf ko joxe ba pare waaw élection lan la képp ku nekk si ñun jóg samp seen dënd laaj réew mi ñi nga xamante ni ñoom la ko yàlla tooxal seen xol yi ñu jël ko jox la ko ne yàlla ki faa toog tànn na ko ba pare so ñu ngee ñaan élection bi ñu ànd ci ak sago ñu ànd ci ak dal ñu xam ne réew mi ñoo ko bokk gannaaw élection ñun ñooy dajee ci jàkka yi ñooy dajee ci cooj yi gannaaw élection ñooy dajee ci takka yi ñooy dajee ci ngénte yi gannaaw élection ñooy dajee ci marché yi gannaaw élection ñooy meyante doom ñooy sëy ñu ni neen suñ biir moo tax lépp lu ci waay di wax na ko seetaat lépp lu ci waay di def na ko seetaat this is not a competition waaye lii synergie la waaye tey boo xoolee lii naka Jaase wax kitaabu lu mu wax suma mbokk mi kuram lu mu wax ak lépp luñ fi teg defe naa xam-xam bu leer la te defe naa lii sax tontu na ñi nga xam ne ñoom ñoo doon wax ne ñun dañ jóg rek pour ut tur defe naa li fi rot tey affaire bi leer na man di lii dee musuma koo gis in the annals of history of this country waaw di la ñaanal yow Haruna yàlla mu yokk say fan may la wér gu yaram di ñaanal panélistes yi tamit yàlla sàmm ñu aar ñu ne géew la boo xam ne yombut waaw yàlla mu yombalal ñu ko ci zahir ak ci baatin waaw naka noonu itam supporters yi fii képp ku nekk am na foo far waaye gis naa ne képp ku nekk mu ngi ànd ak sago affaire bi teey na dal na te am nañ ci jàngat waaw dinaa fa teg suma loxo te ba pare tamit wax nga ci mbiri health care waaw foog naa suñu health care system bi lim soxla rek mooy ñu góorgóorlu ci standard ci raise ba pare ñu take care of our health personnel ñu jàppale leen so that's just dafa soxla leadership waaw te leadership moom dafa am lu bari lim laaj buñ ko joxee rek problème lu ñuy wax ni yépp dafa dal di yomba jërëjëf
jërëjëf thank you Mr. Jassy
jërëjëf Mr. Dramé bëgg naa njëkk a wax ci health care bi ba pare ma soog a tëj again soo seetloo suñ health care system bi li ñu wax ne suñ xale yu jigéen ñu ngi ñàkk seen bakkan ci lopitaan yi ci something loo xam ne lii nii dafa normal comme jur doom lii dee xew mooy ne duñ dee am primary care services primary health care services moo du dee am hospital si dañ congested the workload dafa heavy so fu ñu jaar wàññi workload bi ci hospital si ak health care centers yi su ko defee ñi nga xam ne ñii seen li leen feebar bi leen dal mun nañ koo faj te du jar ñu dem lopitaan loolu mooy primary care bi léegi naka la ñoo defaree primary care bi man égg damaa delluwaat back ci suñ military bi because ci military bi dañoo create an army corps of health technicians these health technicians dañoo use mobile health units ñoom ñooy dawal health unit bi dugal ko ci villages dugal ko in every corner of the country di joxe primary health care services loo xam ne lii nii ñoom mënuñ koo faj dinañ ko refer to the next level which is the secondary health care boobu moom mun nañ koo ebal ci health centers yi health centers yi su dee mun nañ koo faj dinañ ko ebal to the next level which is the tertiary healthcare where you have the hospitals at that level nag dañ foofu la government bi war a partnership with the private sector ñi nga xam ne ñoom ñoo amee jumtuwaayu ees yi nga xam ne moom la ñoo jëfandikoo ci healthcare dëkk yu mel ni America nguur gi moomul hospital yi hospital bi nit ñee ko moom investors yee ko moom li nga xam ne lii nii yow soo ki nga xam ne mu ngi jógee Gambia di dem di fay Sénégal pour scan su amee machine bu ko scan Gambia mu fay moo ko gënal muy pay pass di dem ki nga xam ne moom machine boobu government bi mun na koo indi partner ak moom mu toog Gambia nga xam ne ku soxla scan bi government bi na def tuuti yow nga def li ci des ñu fay ko nga am sa scan ñu mun laa faj healthcare service bi dafa am 3 levels primary healthcare services secondary healthcare services and tertiary so what primary bi nga xam ne moo gën a am solo dañ koo jébal ko ci loxo military bi nga xam ne dañ leen a train as registered nurses health technicians and from there ñu develop them ñu become doctors nga xam ne they can continue to serve even after they are out of the military because once again my experience in the United States most of doctors in IDC they worked in the US military loolu mooy li nga xam ne dama continuer di advocate utilizing our military asset in every aspect of development in the country it will work gannaaw loolu Mr. Dramé maa ngi lay sant di la gërëm ci this brilliant idea bi nga indi and man sant naa yàlla ne I have made history because of the efforts I am standing here in the United States of America participating in a presidential debate that is taking place in the Gambia live. This shows when we come together to do things how we can easily change our condition from what it is now to what it can be and what we want it to be. Gis naa the high standards yi suma colleagues yi register on the stage. I have nothing but respect for these people. The only one I knew before this was Mr. Jeng, whom I not only respect but admire and recognize his contribution towards me when I was in mile 2, leading us in prayer. And when I listened to this or the two guys, I'm losing track of the names here. This is nothing but a wealth of knowledge. This is nothing but a wealth of knowledge. I can stand here and tell you today, right now as we speak, the 4 of us can form a government. There is enough knowledge on the stage to move this Gambian nation, and we should do that. Thank you.
That is probably where we should have begun, to in fact look at synergy. Since we're in coalition talks all over the country, if NPP and APRC could come together, I do not see any reason why a Fati, Kurang, Jeng and Jassy coalition cannot happen. Maybe you should be talking. Who knows? It's a possibility. We don't say no. This is an interesting year. It's a very interesting year. And this year also, well, you see.
Yes.
So that's also something. Di santa di gërëm ñëpp ñu fi teewe tey ak ñu toog ci kër yi di ñu seetaan ci ñeneenti koñi àdduna yëpp ne liñ fas yéene mooy yaatal géewi politique bi Gambia war nañoo mun a am ñuy mun a waxtaan ñu ne neen politique warut a nekk mbiri xaalis ki am rek moo mun a dem di gisanteeg ñëpp dafa war a nekk yafi waxtaan ku nekk dag ñu war a wax léegi lu leer fan nga tollu suñu réew mi buñ la ko dénkee foo ko jëmee foog loolu leer lii moo tax ñu ubbi géew bi nii ku bëgg a réew mi nag te man koo yore kooku xaalis warut a tax lii tax mu dellu gannaaw si mun a yore réew moo tax laajuñ fi kenn dërëm pour ngeen ñëw waaye ñu ne ngeen waxtaan ak Gambien yi ñu fi nekk ak ñu fi nekkut ñu leen xamutoon xam leen xàmmee leen ràññee leen foo leen jaar si réew ñu xam ne kat kii mu ngi nii am na ñuy bind si Facebook bu tey di wax ne ah man kii de naw naa ko am na suma karta yéen xëy na gisaangu leen loolu waaye nit ñaa ngi koo waxtaane réew lii moo koo doxal foog ñu waxante dëgg foog ñu teete wante ñu jàppante loxo ñun yëpp ñu bokk benn jubluwaay benn Gambia la mënuñoo am ñaari Gambia di leen jaajëfal bu baax kontaan nañ torop di wax nag pour mu leer Essa Mbaye Fall ak nitam ñi bind nañ leen laaj leen ñen ñu ñëw ñu ne pare nguñ dafa am yeneen yu ñoo def ngemba gi daal foog naa la ñoo takk mu gën a digéer buñ paree xëj na nañ ñu wuyu si docteur Amadou Kanté itam woo nañ ko waxtaan nañoo ak moom it mu ne daal affaire si daf ko xala suufu parewul bu paree nañu woy li tax may wax li pour mu leer rek bu ëllëgee bu ñu xam ne bàyyi kenn gannaaw waaye nag mënuñoo forcer kenn ku ñëw ku ñëwul nag yaa mënta ñëw wala yaa baggu la ñëw bi ci mën a doon rek mari soog nag nga xam ne moom kenn rek mooy jigéen si ñuy soxla nguur bi fii woo nañ ko waxtaan nañoo moom mu ne mu ngi dox réew mi jigéeni réew ñi ñoo ko soxal fu mu nekk ni amut aajo bi pour waxtaan ju mel nii mu ngi si àll bi ñu bàkko nag ñu wote ko moom it mu dem banque nag jotoon nañoo waxtaan moom nangu woon na sax dina ñëw waaye tey gis nañ mu bind si Facebook bi ne moom kenn prépare wut ko waxuñ ko luñ doon nar a waxtaanee xamul sax fan la lii di nekk moo tax munta bokk waaye nag lii mooy mbir mi woo nañ ñëpp ñoo xam ne xam nañ leen Papa J Fall géem nañ parce que suñu liggéeyaa waral lu mel nii lii ndaje media la musuta am bu lay njël benn yoon si réewi Gambia te ñun media bi ñoo ko def war nañoo mën a am lu ñoo ndamoo réforme yu ngeen a wax daal na réforme yi bari media réforme nag soxluñ ko parce que media bi réforme na boppam ba pare jërëjëf.